to Zion's Roar Ministries, boldly proclaiming Yeshua, the conquering King, with foundations in the Hebrew scriptures of the Tanakh, accompanied by Jewish context and rabbinical insights. Zion's Roar Ministries declares that Yeshua is the salvation of God, just as he revealed to his servants, the prophets. And now, here's the founder of Zion's Roar Ministries, Rick Wagner.
Well, Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
Yes, the monitors need to be on, or nobody can see. Let's see if they work. I told you I've been running in circles, haven't I? Let's see. That one launched. Let's see if we can get him, get it turned on. And this one is still thinking about it. We'll try that. There we go. We'll get it up and running here in a second. All righty. And there we go. All right. Well, hey, welcome everybody out in Streamland. Apologize for all the technical glitches. That's one of those things that we're always dealing with. But it's good to see everybody. It's been a while. It's been way too long. And Lord knows there's a lot going on in our world today. Probably the most significant prophetic accelerant in memory has occurred this week. And so we'll be discussing that for sure. Looking forward to what your insights may be, because I've been trying to track everything going on, as well as different folks in different states. My wife, Dee, is with her father right now, and so keep them and their family in prayer. He's had a rough go, and so we still got Tiffany's mother, Karen, in the hospital, who's also having a very rough time. And I know Jerry's recovering from surgery, and Robert's been down with his back and heart and issues that he's got. Still got Wayne out there with packing that kidney stone around. I don't know. I think he's made himself a pet rock or something out there, Wayne. Hoping you passed that thing by now. So we've got several folks that have been kind of dealing with some challenges. The enemy is active because he knows his time is short. It's getting close. So anybody got anything that they want to throw out before we begin?
How is your wife's father doing?
He's,
Good catch.
yeah. I can tell you how her husband's doing, but...
Biden. This is my wife and this is my sister. Oh, they switched
They
on
switched,
me.
yeah. He's having a tough go. They've placed him in hospice last week, and so he's got some home hospice nurses coming in, and so she's trying to spend some time with him, and we've been back and forth, but she left today after work, and it's one of those deals where trying to balance where you need to be can be a challenge. So definitely keep them in prayer along with everybody else. We've got several people that are in need of prayer and that sort of thing. And of course, his people Israel, first and just front and center, a lot of prayer. And I know there has been lots of prayer going up for them. But we know where this is leading and why. And, I was telling somebody before we went live, we ought to be packing this place out with people because we've got the truth of what's going on.
Yes.
I've watched some of the news commentators with all their expert strategic analysis, Middle East experts, and I've never seen a more clueless bunch of people in my life on most of these networks. But if you understand the Bible and Bible prophecy and specifically eschatology, if you have a good grasp of Israel's role in these things, you can see pretty clearly where this is going and why. And the timing is remarkable. I sent out a deal to the group, and I stole it from another devotional that I received about the water drop in the stadium, if you saw that. Because there's basically it's a story about if you set in a 50,000 seat stadium with one drop of water in the center, and the drop doubles every minute, by 49 minutes you drown. But At 44 minutes, it's only 7% full. So all the action happens in that last 5 minutes because as it compounds multiply. And that's kind of what the end's going to be like. It's those birth pains that are, and then they start picking up until there's a new life has entered the room, and that's exactly what we're racing toward in Bible prophecy. So we got a lot of things to discuss, but I just wanted to check on everybody. I haven't got to see anybody for a while, so.
So Glenola is still struggling with shingles. She was hoping.
Glenola or Marty?
Marty. Well, both of them.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh
Marty
my
got
goodness!
it 3 weeks before Glenola.
Oh my goodness gracious!
And Glenola, but she's just wiped out tired.
Oh, I can imagine. I can imagine. Oh, and we got a request for Gladys Rosado. Fell and broke her hip. So I tell you what.
She had surgery on Wednesday.
Surgery on Wednesday.
And she's hoping that she'll be able to be out this weekend. I haven't reached out to her yet. I was going to reach out to her Monday and see if she's done or if she's still in the hospital. She's at Mercy, so if she's still at the hospital and it's not home, then I'm going to go see her too.
Well, and bless those that are visiting those that are sick. That's actually something that Yeshua. Well, it's a mitzvah amongst the Jewish people for sure, but Yeshua speaks of it too. He says, you come saw me when I was sick and in prison, and I better unravel myself here before I go throwing that jacket. Huh?
If I might ask, is your father-in-law declining, or did they just call in hospice? Because I know
He's
hospice
declining.
sometimes cares for people that aren't.
Yeah, no, I'm afraid he's seems to be declining a bit. So we'll see. It's been a tough time for them. Yes.
Well, I just asked for prayer for my family.
Okay.
My mom passed away about a week and a half ago.
Oh, I'm sorry.
She was 99. I didn't know if she knew the Lord or not, but a lot of people witnessed to her, especially at the end. One thing on my heart was that she wouldn't be alone when she passed.
Right.
And I got the call and went up there. I was able to be with her for 20 minutes. I was with her when she passed. So nobody else was.
Wow.
And it gave me, she couldn't respond, but it gave me the opportunity to share with her and talk to her.
Bless
So
God.
I feel, good about that. And that was on Tuesday night, but on Sunday when I went to see her, she had noticeably declined. And I kind of had a talk with the Lord, because it's been all these years. She was 99,
Yeah.
and decades, and I felt like he was telling me, trust him. And so I said in my mind, I trust you. And I felt like I was supposed to say it out loud. So I said it out loud, And
Yeah.
I don't know if you wanted me to hear myself say it or what. I don't know, but I just had peace with that. So, but the family now, we're planning the service, and
Right.
my sister wants to have a very formal Episcopal service, which I feel like I'm a foreigner to.
I understand.
And my brother, who's not a believer, wants to have something completely different. And I just, would like to do something
That can be
Did you tell him you'd
tough.
comply with that as long as you can bring in your dancers to do a celebration?
There you go.
that's probably going to be a pretty
well-
mix of different types of people there.
Yeah, sometimes it is.
Well, we definitely got lots of folks just in need of a touch from the Lord, whether it's family or whatever, because it's a strain on family as well to go through everything that's going on. So, and I know Vicki just texted in about that Wayne Stone. We talked about that already, Vicki, but you may before you got on board, because I was accusing him of trying to get a pet rock out of the deal or something, pack it around with him, keeping that thing so long. So tell him to pass that on. And I'm getting comments about my suit and shirt and all that sort of stuff. So yeah.
They're just jealous.
That's exactly it. Well, here's the deal. Usually on Fridays I'm just working from home and I can change and come up. But I had a bunch of meetings and stuff today at work, and so by the time I got it around and got down here and all that, it was just too much hassle to go home and try to change, and I just come on down like I was. So that's the explanation for that, for those that are wondering. Well, why don't we go to the Lord in prayer? I think that's probably the best thing we can do about anything. Amen? So I will leave that, I suppose. I don't see any folks just jumping. Father, we just thank you that you brought us safe again another week for Shabbat, Lord. And we just want to enter into the rest of your Shabbat. And Lord, we want to lift up your people, Lord, that you bring a peace to them during this period of time. Father, Lord, we just pray for their protection. Lord, we ask you to engage the heavenly host about them, Father, Lord. Lord, I also pray that you give them skill, wisdom, and might as they engage in the counter effort that they are forced to engage in against these enemies that have gathered themselves against them. So, Lord, we lift up your people there and abroad as we know that this is escalating and spilling out all over the globe. Lord, we just ask for, we understand where it's going. Father, we're asking for your mercy that's new every day for those that are being impacted by this worldwide. And Lord, we pray for an outpouring of the gospel of Yeshua, Lord, that the laborers will wake up and get in the fields while there's still yet time. And Lord, that we'll all trim our wicks and be the wise virgins that are ready to meet you at your appearing. Lord, I do lift up all the members that we've discussed tonight. There's so many, I'm not sure I could list them all without forgetting someone, Father, but I know you know each and every one. And Lord, we just pray for them and the healing that they need. Lord, we pray for their spirits, for their emotional well-being, for their mental state, Father, for their physical state, and most importantly, their spiritual well-being. And Lord, we lift up the families and friends that are providing support or care or any of those things that can also be emotionally draining and exhausting in those instances. Lord, we just ask for your strength and your power and your might to embolden them in those efforts. Lord, I thank you for these precious people, Father, Lord, and for those that have joined us out there online. Lord, I just pray that you magnify yourselves in their lives, Lord, and speak to them in the night. Lord, speak to their hearts. Lord, speak reassurance that they're in the palm of your hand and cannot be snatched away from you, Father. Lord, this draws us each closer and closer and closer into that intimate fellowship with you as we near the time. And Lord, we just ask you for inspiration, understanding of the way we should go. Lord, just give us discernment as we make decisions from day to day about what is the best course of action, no matter what those courses of action are. Lord, we ask for protection over our children and over both Jewish and Christian schools, and Father, these things that are being targeted right now throughout our nation and around the world. Lord, we just ask for your presence in all these things. Lord, specifically for tonight, Lord, we just ask that you visit us with that dwelling presence of the Ruach HaKodesh amongst us as we discuss the Word and the events that are going on as they relate to what you have said to expect and to lift our head when we see. So, Father, we just commit this night to you. Lord, we commit all those in our fellowship and all those that we are aware of into your hands. And, Lord, we just praise and honor and glorify your name. And we thank you for such great love that you loved us enough to lay down your life to ensure that we could dwell together for all eternity. And it's in the mighty name of Yeshua we pray. Amen. All right. Well, by golly, here we go. A lot's going on, amen? So I've been collecting a few news stories, as you can imagine, but I'll be honest, there's so much going on so many media channels that it's pretty overwhelming. So I know I've probably missed some stuff or just chose not to include it, but if you've got some insights or anything that you picked up on along the way as we're having our discussion, feel free to throw it out, because what I'm going to try to posit here is we're going to review some of these media stories as I believe we can see a path forward in a prophetic sense, if you understand, from a strategic, where this is going sense. And you may have insights of your own that are helpful. I'm going to say right up front, I didn't try to include everything because we just can't. And I do understand that there is a lot of things going on, but I'm going to trust that most of us have been keeping up with what's going on our own, at least are aware of what's going on in Israel and abroad, as we've talked about Hamas. If you missed the 8th day, last Sunday, I spoke specifically about Islamic terrorism and Hamas, and brought some things from my background into that message. So if you've missed that, you might want to go back and watch a little bit of that, at least pick up some of that history of Islam. Kind of brings you up to speed of what happened, who the leaders are, how they got started, where their funding sources are primarily from. And it's, a lot of people are throwing Iran's name down, but the United States is a big player in this, and you just need to understand that. And so if you missed that particular broadcast and you're interested in understanding a little more about the Islamic angle behind all this, I'd really encourage you to go back and watch it. I do intend at some point to do a teaching on just Islam. And I had some requests because I used a portion of a PowerPoint that I had that's specifically for law enforcement, so I couldn't show everything that's on there because there's some sensitive information on it, but I pulled out a couple of different slides that I showed. And so I had requests, well, okay, is there any way to get a copy of that? Well, I'm like, no, there's really not, because of the sensitive information on it. And besides that, it is a presentation I prepared in 2003. So it's 20 years old, and I would like to update it. A lot's happened in the last 20 years. Now, a lot of the things are still the same when we go to the core of Islam. And so that's some of the stuff I spoke of. But some of the activities of Hamas and Hezbollah and some of these others have accelerated since that time. And so at some point, in my free time, I'm going to try to update this presentation. I have actually considered maybe just doing a seminar day. I don't know what interest there would be in that, but like picking a Saturday or something and just doing a seminar on Islamic terrorism. And, of course, I'll be tying in scripture and things, but I don't know what the interest level would be for something like that amongst our own. And I don't know what the interest level would be if we were to just open it up for outsiders. If it drew interest, we might have to look at another facility to hold it at if we didn't have the capacity for it. And then, of course, there's the double-edged sword of doing something like that does draw attention from the enemy as well.
What about Paul Blair's church? Have you thought about reaching out?
I've not thought of that, but that's a
Might be very
possibility.
open to that.
That's a possibility. But again, it's not that I'm, I don't want to pass myself off as the world's expert on all things here. I do have some exposure to it. I was a terrorism instructor for a period of time, and but I understand Bible prophecy, and I can show you where some of this stuff fits biblically and what's going on. And so anyway, just throwing that out there that's something I'm toying with doing. I can tell you that it's one of the things I hate doing the most. And the reason is Islam's evil, my friends. It's, as you saw this week, it's rooted in darkness. It's rooted in the occult. People don't realize the occultic roots of Islam. It's not just it's a monotheistic. Well, hang on. there's some deep occultic stuff in there as well. Very, very satanic origins. And so every time I've taught on it, it's been a very dark oppression type thing, and it's something that I just dread doing sometimes. But if it's something that needs to be done in the day and this hour, because after 9/11, I attempted to sound the alarm, both of the law enforcement community and the local congregations. And what I found is Americans simply were not prepared to hear it. And there was so much politically correct backlash that they just would not receive it. You were casting your pearls before swine, I guess you could say. I was invited to a few congregations to speak on it, and I did, both in state and out of state. And what I found was twofold. One, they weren't prepared to accept it. Two, the church has largely failed, and not just the church, but both Jewish and Christian congregations, has largely failed to provide an adequate foundation of Bible prophecy for people to grasp it, even if they were prepared to receive it. And the third thing I found as I traveled around is American congregations are so conditioned for, I've got 3 bullet points, and we're going to be out in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And folks, I am telling you, you cannot address what's going on in that time frame. I can't even, you will not understand the magnitude. And that's what I'm afraid is we've developed such a short attention span. And they know that too. They prey on that. By the way, I can say strategically, they understand America very well. Many of these groups and their leaders have been educated here. They've spent a great deal of time here, and they are not stupid. They have doctorate degrees. They've got master's degrees from our universities, and they have funded Islamic chairs of studies in these universities through Saudi and other sources, Muslim Brotherhood associations, student associations, and have begun to inculcate, as you've probably seen in the news, an Islamic mindset in the universities that is also Marxist. And there is a long history of a Marxist-Islamic linking together. You would think that's not the case, but it is. A lot of people go, well, how can that be? Weren't the communist atheists? Evil is evil is right. And there's a long link between Islamic and Marxist communist type thought and politics. Saddam Hussein, I'm getting all, I can see I'm going to go down the rabbit. I can see I'm going to go down the rabbit hole.
Just teach it tonight.
I'm just going to talk. We're just talking. Saddam Hussein was a member of the Ba'ath Party. And what he sought to do was create an Islamic, he wanted to be the caliphate. He saw himself, he literally believed, Saddam Hussein literally believed that he was the reincarnated King Nebuchadnezzar. And that's why in Iraq they had he began rebuilding Babylon, and the bricks that he was using he had cast with his image on it as the second Nebuchadnezzar. And so they were casting coins with Nebuchadnezzar's portrait and Saddam Hussein's right beside him, because he literally believed he was a reincarnation of Nebuchadnezzar. And his thought of Nebuchadnezzar was destroying the Jews, right? But the other thing that's widely overlooked is he was a member of the Ba'ath Party. And what they were is they sought to merge Islam with Marxism, communism, socialism. And the Ba'ath Party was a socialist Islamic party. And that's why Russia and some of these...
the Red-Green Alliance.
That's the Red-Green Alliance, exactly right. If you're familiar with that phrase, we've used it before. The Red-Green Alliance, red representing communism, socialism, Marxism, green representing Islam.
Could you show us that in the flags as well?
I've shown you that in the flags in the past. For those that have been around, I've been talking about this for at least 12 years with our group here. So for those that are longtime Zion Zor people, Shabbat Bible study people, we've been around this block before. But the problem is, particularly in America, we're kind of a short attention span. Squirrel. What's next? And so what happens is, Islam was a problem then, but now it's kind of leveled out. No, it hasn't. It's never leveled out. You've just changed your attention to something else, and that's kind of what's happened. So again, this socialist Islamic axis is very important to understand, because it is the basis of Gog Magog that you're going to see in Ezekiel 38 when we begin to see this. You know, when we talk about Magog coming out of the north, Persia and all the hordes thereof and all this, there is a definitive link there, and there always has been. I was talking to some young people a week or so ago who had never heard that Islam had been involved in World War II. You see, people focus on the Nazis, or maybe if you're a Pacific Theater person, you focus on the Japanese or something. But Islam was a large part of that as well. Hitler met on multiple occasions with the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, who was the Arab mayor, if you will. It's about the way a mufti is kind of like a mayor that was overseeing the area of Jerusalem during the period of World War II. And they were in agreement, because the Nazi, people go, all these right-wing Nazis, that's what the media goes, but the name is National Socialist Party. That's what Nazi meant. That's what the word means. It was a socialist thing. And so what happened is he had met with the Grand Mufti in Jerusalem, once again, that same Arab socialist alliance, and they agreed on one thing in particular, and that was to destroy the Jews. And so they wanted to do it worldwide. Hitler had set up his camps and was doing all the things we know Hitler did. And they were making agreements, contractual treaty-type agreements between the two to ship all the Jews that they could find out of the land to Hitler too. And so they're in the process of building railroad cars and boats and all kinds of stuff to get these Jewish people that had been settling there all along. The Jewish presence has never really left the land. It's just been meager over the centuries, very meager. Just a handful here and a handful there. And it was in about the 1800s when it first started. Theodor Herzl, if you're familiar with Theodor Herzl, he was instrumental in creating what the world knows today as Zionism, with the idea that we need to go back to Zion. Theodor Herzl was a newspaper reporter in France. Gosh, there's so much here.
We need the seminar on a Saturday.
We need the seminar on a
It's gonna be
Saturday
packed
because
out.
it's
People are ready.
well, that's what I'm saying. In the past, they weren't. Maybe after seeing these atrocities, people are going, well, wait, what? And maybe they're ready for a seminar day now, and I can talk about these things because once I start, you've got to follow the progression to see how we got to where we are today, why, and where it's going, and why. Because the one thing America has done is failed to learn the lessons of history, and it has totally failed to learn the strategic steps for its own good.
Not to mention the same spirits are
Same spirits are still doing the same thing, but when America began to abandon God, and literally back in the 60s or so, and slowly progress until it's accelerated where it is today, when you're turned over to that reprobate mind, you can't even think good sense for your own well-being, and that's kind of where we're at today. We do a lot of really dumb things that's not good for Israel, not good for the Jewish people, and not good for us. And you probably saw the news story about we're not sending the best and brightest to Washington, right? Fetterman. So anyway, I digress. And Biden and everybody
Fetterman's
else.
the one that said it.
He's the one that said it. That was what's funny. But anyway, all right. Well, I'm going to stop there because again, if I start there, I have to go through all the history of everything that happened.
Well, we can fast and pray before you do it.
There we
If
can.
you
I
come.
just got to. The big thing is going to be finding a window because I assure you, the enemy is trying to keep me very busy these days. And I suspect I know why. And we're having a lot of, we need to pray together corporately for our
Yes.
ministry and our people
Yes.
because we're seeing physical attacks on the health of our people, and which is, you see, I think I've talked about this before too. Some of you, it's been around a while. Back when I was doing WMD counter-terrorism stuff, the idea isn't always to kill people. Remember me talking about this? Because if you if you're in battle and you launch a weapon that kills everybody or kills your partner, you're still coming to the fight. But if I launch a weapon that wounds your partner, then you have to stop everything to try to care for them. And then the fight falters, all right? And that's what a lot of chemical agents are designed to do. That's what a lot of biological agents are designed to do. If I can just make everybody sick, then even the ones who aren't sick can't be devoted to the fight because they're over here setting up MASH units and triage units and taking care. And it's a, what military terms, what we call a force multiplier, is when you can do something that has an enlarged effect of magnitude. And folks, I'm telling you, spiritually, this is the explanation for why you're seeing so much. I mean, every time you turn around, you're hearing from somebody who's, I've got a loved one that's down, or at the point of death, or surgery, or incapacitated, and families trying to care for them and doing rotations, and friends are coming up to the hospital, and everybody's out of rotation trying to take care of one another, and that is a military strategy to take people out of the fight, and it works. It works in the natural. It works in the spiritual realm. So definitely be praying. If you're out there in Streamland, please lift us up. Pray. And not just us. It's not just us going through this. We're seeing this all over. And I think we will continue to see this all over. And so it's going to be important to focus on those things as we move forward. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and exit out of this, and we will start some of these updates. See where we go. I am going to start right here. After days of indecision, Netanyahu and Gantz agreed to establish the emergency war government. So as you know, what day was it? Monday? I think Sunday, Monday. When was it?
Tuesday?
Monday? I think it was Monday.
Yeah, I was thinking it was Monday.
I'm thinking
Yeah,
it's
it was
Monday.
early
It was early in the morning Monday for us. They're 8 hours ahead of us in Israel. That Hamas launched.
I thought it was Saturday.
Was it Saturday?
Is it
I've lost track.
Yeah, the text was on Saturday.
The text was
Saturday
on
morning
Saturday.
our time.
Saturday morning our time. That's right. Like I said, I've been running everywhere. I'm losing track. But they launched this big assault, as you know, and by air with these gliders and all this sort of stuff, which is a good indicator of external assistance from somewhere else, both for training and equipment, financing, all that sort of stuff. A lot of people trying to point the fingers at Iran and things like that, but don't be surprised if some of those links don't come back right here before it's all over. If you remember right, Oklahoma was the nexus for all the training and planning for both the 1993 World Trade Center bombing as well as 9/11 in 2001. Our local mosques we've known since the 90s, early 90s. Have some questionable characters in and out of there. They actually have bought up some land in southeastern Oklahoma, if you're not aware of this, to set up training camps, basically, Islamic training camps in the southeast part of the state, because they can go down there and shoot and run and gun, jump and roll, and that's what Bubba does down there too. I mean, that's everybody's. So nobody thinks anything about seeing a truckload of guys with rifles jumping and rolling and shooting and carrying on. And so a lot of the training that has been done in the past has been done in Oklahoma. A lot of people don't realize that. There's 2 or 3 reasons for this. One, we are a culture that they can blend, because a lot of the Middle Eastern descent are of a complexion similar to those of Hispanic descent, and we've got a large Hispanic population here, and a lot of people can't differentiate between the two, and so they just merge right on in, blend in.
And we're so accepting.
And yes, and so anyway, it's an available place to come. 2, we are geographically center in the nation, with interstates, and we do have an airport, and all those sort of things. So it's a good place for everyone to converge and then disperse on assignment.
Yeah.
3, our law enforcement presence in Oklahoma is not like the law enforcement presence in New York City. And what I mean by that is we don't have the intelligence resources of the NYPD. We don't have assignment, there's a large federal contingent in the New York areas and stuff like that of intelligence. I'm talking about capacities. And we just don't have those resources or funding or anything like that here. And so they have a greater chance of escaping detection or infiltration by informants or undercovers or things like that here in Oklahoma. And even if they did, we don't have the resources they have to throw at it should something go down. And so Oklahoma is a significant player in the war on terror, if you will, that a lot of people just don't realize, and it always has been. We have recordings going back to the 1990s. Steve, well, you can Google him later. The Investigative Project on Terrorism, IPT. He was a former media personality here in Oklahoma City who began to do some undercover stories and began to discover some stuff going on in the mosques. And anyway, he's in Washington, D.C. now doing some think tank stuff, but that's as far back as the 90s. I used to have an affiliation with him, but it's been a while. I've been out of the game for a little while. So anyway, where am I going with all this? Well, here's where I was going. They launched this attack using these paraglider, hang glider type things. Were able to come in, breach the gates, open the gates, come through with ground assault, with vehicles and all that.
And how were they able to reach
This is causing a great deal of controversy in Israel. There's a lot of distrust right now as to how did this happen? Was this really an intelligence failure or something else going on?
Yeah, because there's some reports saying that they were warned beforehand.
Well, yes, the reports about being warned beforehand, Egypt's intelligence has allegedly shared with Israeli and U.S. intelligence that they were expecting something big to happen within maybe 3 days' time. They had like 3-day warning on that. Depending on which source you review, the story was either, well, A, they just ignored it. I don't think that was likely. The other was, well, they just let it happen. I'm not sure that's quite likely as well. What probably happened is the material was reviewed, and some of the sources are saying, yeah, we saw it, we saw what they were doing, but we mistook it for drills, and because they're doing that stuff all the time.
But you have to
And
think about what happened in Hawaii.
I understand.
There's a correlation.
That's what I'm saying. As I suspect there's more to what's going on. Israelis expect there's more to what's going on. Some on the left, what I'm trying to say is I want to be careful about that because all sides are creating this theory that best suits their agenda.
I just think the timing's suspicious.
Well, yeah, absolutely it's suspicious. But I mean, when I say that, I mean not just the right, but the left is also coming with their theories about why this is, Netanyahu did this on purpose to boost his reelection, boost his strength of government and all. I'm not sure I see that, you see, but those are the kind of things that are being bandied about all throughout Israel and the United States. So.
And where could it happen next? Right here in the
It
US?
will happen next year. I will just go out on a limb and say that. I think you're going to see pretty soon.
I do too.
As we progress through this, it'll
I do too.
probably explain that a little better. But what this did do is it did bring two way off, one on the far end and one on the far end together to create the wartime government, which allows Israel to engage. They activated Article 40, which has not been activated in since 1973, the Yom Kippur War. There are some parallels with Yom Kippur. A lot of the people are saying, well, it was an intelligence failure like the 73 Yom Kippur War. Maybe, maybe not, but there are some other similarities. You know, during the 1973, before they launched the Yom Kippur War, the OPEC nations initiated an oil embargo that crippled the United States. If you're around in the 70s, under Carter, you remember sitting in gas lines at gas stations, not being able to get any gas because of the oil embargo by OPEC. And most Americans were all focused on the oil embargo and can't get gas in my car and all this sort of stuff. But that was just the crippling pre-staged effect. Yeah, exactly. You know the story. So that they could attack over in Israel. And that's exactly what happened here. Now, we talked about in some of our news updates about Saudi suspending production for the rest of the year. You remember that?
Yeah.
A few weeks ago? That's not accident. And a lot of people still look at Saudi as being a viable partner for peace. Saudi is the root of Islam. It's the holy land of Islam. It's where it all began. They are not a partner for peace. And I have made this argument for 20-some years, and I've had a lot of serious pushback, even by military people. People who served in the military come, oh, you just don't know. They're our allies, and I was in Iraq, and and I'm telling you, you're being played. You're being played. You're being played. And you know, if you remember the war in Iraq, how many times did one of our Allied fighters walk into an army tent and lob a grenade and blow up all of his own people? All right. Well, that's not his own people. You know, remember Major Hassan down in Texas that came down and shot up everybody at the army base recruitment. And, well, how could he do this to his own unit? Well, it's not his own unit. You've been infiltrated. People need to understand there's some serious magnitude here, and we've played the fool. We have played the fool for a while. So in any event, Israel has initiated some things. I believe it's going to be a very hot war, but because of that, there will be calls for peace pretty soon. I expect will be coming. So I think that may be the motivator. You know, when we talk about was this allowed, is it planned, who's all involved in it, does it go beyond Hamas, does it go beyond Hezbollah, does it go beyond? I believe it goes to some probably global players.
Exactly, that's exactly what I was gonna say.
And I believe it probably goes to one in particular, but I don't know his name because he won't be revealed.
He's got billions at his disposal.
But he has billions at his disposal, yes, as the King Charles said. I do believe he will be revealed, but 2 Thessalonians 2 says something else has to happen first. The restrainer has to be removed out of the way. So I strongly believe that this is being orchestrated by a beast already present among us, using global resources at his disposal. And you know, if you say something like deep state, everybody goes into Trump things in the United States, and I'm not. It's far beyond that. It's not just a United States thing. Although I do believe we are probably the biggest offender in that.
Yes, absolutely.
Babylon the Great. But folks, I'm going to share with you my honest opinion. I don't, it doesn't mean I'm right. This is just me speculating, looking at things. I believe it's a play by the beast himself somewhere behind the scenes. We don't know who he is yet, because the brutality and the atrocity and all this sort of stuff. Think about this. This is all parallel to, how many of you have seen articles where they're saying this is the worst thing that's happened since the Nazis? It's the worst thing that happened since the Holocaust.
Since the Holocaust.
This is our Holocaust. Seeing all
This is
that.
our 9/11.
Now, I agree with all that. It is that tragic deal, but think. Because of the Holocaust, what happened?
They got land.
They got their nation. See, they have been trying and trying and trying all through the 1800s. I'd started talking about Theodore Herzl earlier. He'd even went trying to buy land from the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire so that they could build the land. And there was resistance, and he'd sought the British, and the British had some, maybe, you know. And so France, you know. But what happened was the atrocities, when people saw what had happened and what the Nazis had done, and the bodies that were piled up and starved and gassed and shot in ditches and all that, the outrage, the collective outrage, resulted in finally coming through in 1948 with the declaration through the UN and everything. Let them have. That's exactly what I believe will play out. There are a lot of commentators on the news saying, oh, all chances for peace is lost. We were so close. Biden was negotiating with the Saudis, and we were about to make a deal, and we were right there, and now this is never going to happen. But I'm like, you guys have absolutely no idea. I don't care how many initials you have after your name.
Right.
You have no idea what you're talking about. What this is going to do is just the opposite.
Or they're saying that on purpose.
Yeah,
That's, well, I don't think they know.
they don't have a clue.
They don't have a clue, is my opinion.
Yeah.
But I could be wrong. But anyway, what will happen is the collective outrage, because this is going to continue to spill. And as it bubbles up, you know, Hamas called for the day of rage today.
Yeah.
I haven't heard of any other than protest and the normal useful idiots. I haven't heard of any attacks per se yet here. However, they've had an Israeli ambassador attacked in China, and a Jewish school teacher in France stabbed to death today because of this call to action. France has literally had to almost go to a point of martial law because they have been so infiltrated by Muslim immigrants that they have taken to the streets and have shut down pretty much all of France.
Well,
So
we have too, they're just.
we have
in
too,
hotels in
but
New
they're
York.
what they're doing is this is what I just haven't got there yet.
Okay,
They're
sorry.
keeping their powder dry.
Yeah,
Remember, if you go back and you watch the 8th day that I did Sunday when I was talking about Islam and strategies of terrorist organizations, they all agree on the objective. The only difference of opinion they ever had is who should be in charge and the timing. Am I with me? We will see it here, but they're keeping their powder dry for timing purposes. I'm going to try to show you that as we progress.
exactly.
So what happens is they'll put out a call with a specific date. Friday the 13th, everybody rise up. And so what does America do? Everybody ramps up. New York PD called in everybody they had in uniform, put them in uniform. And I mean everybody, folks that aren't normally in uniform. Now let me ask you, what's the economic impact to New York? Okay. What's the economic impact at the airlines? What did they do for security today? You guys see where I'm going with this? See, I can throw out a date and rave and rant and make you, because see, I don't actually have to do anything. This is the other thing about terrorism that's so effective. I don't actually have to kill you. I just have to make you be afraid of being killed. That's what terror is. You know, you don't have terror when you're dead. You have terror while you're alive, worried about being dead, right? It's anticipation of death is worse than death itself. And so a very long-standing strategy of terrorism is to throw out some declaration or some bill that strikes terror in the heart of the population. Should we keep our kids home for school? These things. What are we going to do? What are we going to do?
Which a bunch of people did.
Which a bunch of people did, and I can't say that I blame them. You know, that's part of the calculus. But they know that. That's part of their calculus, and so they're going to create population terror and fear, which suits their purposes, and they're going to cause a pretty good economic impact because everyone across the world, they made it a global call, had to step up security in anticipation of today. And so every police force all over the world and every major metropolitan, whether it's the United States, France, Germany, Britain, doesn't matter, they were at maximum alert. Every intelligence still, they were at maximum alert. Airports, ships, docks, taxis, you name it,
So
transportation.
it wasn't a physical attack, it was a financial attack.
It's a financial attack, and we're already at what, we're about to crumble already. It just pushes it a little further to the edge, a little further to the edge. I will tell you this, the number one strategy of terrorist groups is not physical death. The number one strategy of terrorist groups is economic impact. Always has been. People don't realize that. There was a reason that 9/11 targeted the World Trade Center. That was not a symbolic attack because they were tall buildings. That's not it. It's trade. It's economics. This goes back, I briefly touched on this Sunday, not enough to really explain it, but economic warfare is a fundamental of Islam, and it has been from its inception. When Muhammad tried to convert the Meccans to his new religion, they basically ran him out on a rail. And so what happened, I can see, we're probably never going to get to Daniel 5 tonight. I haven't even got through all these news updates.
That's all right.
But you guys need to know this stuff, and
Yeah,
you need to be
just-
aware, and
just
people need to
flow with the
understand.
Spirit.
So what happens is, when they rejected him, I'm not going to retell the whole story like I did Sunday. If you want to know that, just go watch it. But one of the ways he financed his people, because he had these followers, and he's got no way to support them. You know, how do I support what I'm doing? He had a revelation of how to financially support his unit, at the same time disrupting the finances of the other. He began to attack the caravans, the Meccan caravans, which was trade. You know, back in the day, they load up on a bunch of camels, put them on a line, and go across the desert, and that's how trade was done. That's why Columbus left Spain to try to find another route, was because they had always gone by land. See, people don't understand. The whole reason Columbus, and I know we just had Columbus Day, but we called it Indigenous People Day. But you really need to think about Columbus Day, because there's a reason. A lot of people suspect Columbus was Jewish, because he left about the time of the expulsion of the Jews from Spain. But that's a whole other story for another day. The reason he had letters from Spain to go try to find a trade route, if you remember school, he was trying to find a trade route for spice trade. He was looking for a quick way to get to India. He landed here, he thought these must be Indians, and that's why they're called Indians. That's what he thought, but he obviously didn't know there was a continent in between the two. But why was he looking for the spice route to India? He's coming from Spain. All they had to do is just try to cross the land right over there to India. Why was he looking to sail a ship all the way around the globe to get to India? Because Islam had choked out and taken that area, and they couldn't get through there without being attacked. Just like the pirate ships today, when you see the Islamic coming from the Somalis, the Muslim pirates that are attacking the trade ships that come across bringing cargo ships back and forth. It's the whole reason the United States first formed the Marine Corps, was because they were crippling our trade. The Muslim pirates. Why? Because they believe it has been divinely sanctioned that they can do so according to Allah and the revelation of the Prophet Muhammad, who said, we will support our group with the finances of the enemy. You know, we say the wealth of the wicked is laid up for the just, right? Well, they've got kind of the same concept, except they think they're the just, all right? And that we're the wicked. You know, the woe to those who call evil good and good evil, right? But they've got the same little concept. Satan's a copier. He's an imposter. He just turns everything on its head, but he uses the same arguments, the same principles. And that's what he's done. And they believe that they are authorized divinely to take wealth from the infidel. And that they both can use it to support and use it to cripple them. Because what happens when your economy is strangled? This is key.
Weakened, for one.
What specifically is weakened? What's that?
Military.
Military. Bingo.
Good.
If I can't finance my military, I can't fight the attack. And jihad is all about bringing the world under the domination of Sharia law.
Yes.
And they cannot be abrogated. The Prophet Muhammad said in the hadiths that jihad is the highest obligation. Now, a lot of goofy Americans got the idea because some scholars come, Islamic scholars come and said, well, when we talk about jihad, that's a word that just means struggle. And it's how we struggle to live right and be good people. And Americans bought that and began to say, well, you don't understand what jihad really means. It doesn't really mean fire. These terrorists, they're just twisting the peaceful religion. How many times you heard this?
Yeah.
They're just hijacking the peaceful religion of Islam. And that's not what Islam is about. That's just what these terrorists do. No,
Yeah.
that's a lie from the pit of hell. That is what Islam is about. And
Takia.
Takia is deception. That's right. Just lying to you about it and you buying it because we're trusting naive people. So uninformed, and you don't want to be. I mean, America as a whole doesn't want to be informed because it's scary to think that evil's out there.
That's why we need.
One of the reasons people don't want to talk about what's going on in Israel because it's scary.
Yeah.
What if that happened to me and my kids? I think I'll just turn the TV off and watch. It's time to switch over to Leave It to Beaver and watch some reruns. All right, because they don't want to confront it, and I understand that. But that's exactly what they want. If I can instill that terror, you won't confront it. If I can cripple you economically, you can't support military defense, and so we can launch assaults that you cannot afford to counter. The reason the Soviet Union fell in the 90s was because they spent 10 years fighting in Afghanistan, and Al-Qaeda used that same strategy. And the reason USSR fell was they were economically crippled. They were no longer viable because first of all, they're communism, and they don't, they don't have as strong as robust as capitalism might be. But the bottom line is they spent themselves in oblivion fighting in Afghanistan for 10 years. And most Americans don't even know that because who cares what the rest of the world's doing? Everybody thinks, well, Ronald Reagan stood up and said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. And it fell down and America won. America. Well, no, that's not what happened at all. What happened at all was the Soviet Union was trying to fight Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan because the Soviet Union, socialists, aligned with Islam, but Islam wants to do what? Dominate the world. And so what they were having is they were being backdoored by what they thought were their allies who were trying to plan insurrections in the Soviet Union to take power. You guys follow?
Yep.
And so they went to root that out. Now, when they crumbled because of economic distress, Russia survived as Russia, but all those satellite countries around them suddenly became stand countries. Pakistan, Uzbekistan, Islam, those are all Islamic. Why? How did Islam come out of Russia, the USSR? See, people don't even understand. They don't even ask the question. That's that socialism Islamic alliance that's been in place from the beginning. And so this is very, very important to understand the role Islam plays in bringing about the end.
So that's why Obama, I'm just going to say in layman's terms, I mean, he's in cahoots with the communists, or socialists, I call them communists, but he and his party, so to speak, they're all in cahoots. I wondered how that all meshed together.
Yeah, that's why when you're looking across America today, who's out protesting against Israel in favor of Hamas? Who is it? Black Lives Matter,
Yeah.
Marxist Student Association, all these leftists. It's not the people on the political right that are out burning flags and doing it. They're leftists. They're socialists. It's that alliance. It's that same thought process because it's all birthed from the same imposter.
So do you think that the recent health challenges that we've had, I mean, that seems like an act of terror too. It definitely impacted us economically, and there's definitely fear and all that kind of stuff. Any of that was related to this?
I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't part of the stage leading up to what's going on. This is all about the Temple Mount. If you'll go to my study Monday, I stress, don't get, It's not about a state, it's not about poverty or economic oppression, it's the temple.
You're talking about Sunday, not Monday.
Sunday,
right? Yeah.
yes, I'm sorry, when I did the 8th day. Watch it if you missed it.
Mm.
But anyway, there's a whole, this is a very deep, much deeper than what you think.
Mm.
Very complex, there's strategy going on here that's, it's three-dimensional chess. You ever watch Star Trek where Spock would play three-dimensional chess? It's that, and we're over here trying to read the instruction book on how checkers is played over here, you know. We're just way out of our league.
We're getting sucked in by our emotions. People are,
Yeah.
you know, they're just watching the television and watching
Right.
the TV.
So anyway,
Yeah.
pay attention to what's going on economically. Let me get in here. Let's move on because I'm way behind already. It's an hour just me talking after you started. U.S. government has sent hundreds of millions of dollars to Gaza since Hamas took control. For years, we have sent hundreds of millions of your taxpayer money to the Gaza Strip when they took over in 2007. Now, you may not remember this, but in 2005, when Ariel Sharon was the Prime Minister of Israel, he unilaterally pulled out. Israel was settled in Gaza. They had farms, they had factories, they had all kinds of stuff. And in 2005, Ariel Sharon, in a bid for peace, they were trying to negotiate with the quote Palestinian Authority, which was really the Palestinian Liberation Organization, Yasser Arafat. If you remember remember him. And they wouldn't play. They just wouldn't negotiate. The Arabs wouldn't negotiate. The Palestinians wouldn't negotiate. So Ariel Sharon got the bright idea that if I just pull out on my own without any negotiations, it will show my good faith that we just want to live in peace, neighbor to neighbor, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now he should have known better because he was a veteran of the 6 Day War. And he. But anyway, what they did is Israel pulled out of Gaza and gave them power plants, farms, all kinds of industry, infrastructure, water, all that, and said, left instructions behind. Here's how it's run. Here's how you can do it. Here, and they thought, well, they'll make their own little place and prosper, and they'll be happy and they'll be pleased. And no, that will never happen in Islam. It will never happen in Islam. It can't happen in Islam. It cannot happen. It is not compatible with Islamic doctrine. Period. That's the bottom line. And we, after he did that, now first of all, the United States was upset, and they said, well, you shouldn't have unilaterally done that without our approval. You should have involved us. And basically, Sharon says, hey, we are actually an independent country, and we do what we want to do. And so it took a while for America to get over its hurt feelings about being backdoored on that deal. But eventually they decided, okay, we're going to throw in and follow this line of thought that it's going to. So we're going to provide funding and money, because that's what America's done since World War II with the Marshall Plan, is provide funding to rebuild societies, because we had the mistaken idea. This is something Bush Jr. always pushed, and I have to be careful what I say. I wrote him a letter. So I know I'm on a database watch list somewhere, and I said, let me explain this to you. You are not bringing democracy to Iraq or any other Islamic country, and here is why. And I've outlined everything, footnoted it.
Of course, he's part of the Skull and Bones.
He is.
Exactly.
But that was before I realized just how deep the rot went. That's when I thought I could still make an impact. I've long since gave up on that. But in any event, where was I at? This idea of bringing democracy. So America started throwing money into Gaza, thinking if we help them build that infrastructure and all that, they'll see how great the American way is, and they'll be partners for peace, and they'll probably be even ready to go get away from that, leaning on the socialists like Russia and China. We will use it to woo them to capitalism and Western thought. See, since World War II, America has pursued an agenda of trying to democratize the world at the same time that Russia pursued the agenda of trying to socialize the world. It's what the Vietnam War was about, the Korean War is about, it's what all our wars were about, starting from that point. was, okay, Russia's coming to Cuba. We got a Cuban Missile Crisis. We got to do something to circumvent the socialists from taking off. Oh, the Russians are in Vietnam. We've got to come in there and do something to circumvent that and extend Western influence. Oh, the Russians are over in Korea. We got to go over and see North Korea went socialist, and you got to see the pattern. And so there's been this struggle, but the undercurrent behind it all is not just socialism, it's Islam. Islam is aligned with them, but we've ignored that because an American thought that's a religion. People have a right to have their religion, so we don't want to even strategize about that. Let's focus on the politics. The FBI definition of terrorism did not include religion at all. It was forbidden in their training materials. They couldn't discuss it. So how effective of a counterintelligence strategy do you have if you don't understand the enemy? Right? That's an old Sun Tzu, Art of War thing. Know thine enemy. Anyway, I digress. So we've sent billions, hundreds of millions of dollars to them ever since Ariel Sharon pulled out. If you remember right, he immediately went into a stroke and lingered for several years before he finally passed away. About 10 years, yeah.
And that whole Kaduri thing.
That's right. Kaduri wrote his letter and all that. Yeah, we talked about that. Rabbi Kaduri, if you remember that story. Anyway, but I'm going to digress. So understand that the funding for a lot of this, just like I talked about Sunday, Hamas started in the United States, in Virginia. People think about, well, Hamas, that's somewhere way over there in the Middle East somewhere. Yeah, well, it started in Virginia, and it became the Palestinian arm of the Muslim Brotherhood back in the 90s.
And doesn't the word mean violence?
It does in Hebrew. In Arabic, it means courage. So that's bravery, courage. So you'll see, again, those little twists. But anyway, let me move on here. I'm way behind the curve.
Oh, you're right on time.
All right. Iran, now, as you may recall, two things. Two things are real important. Let me throw this back up. Iran says the U.S. cannot renege on the deal to transfer $6 billion through Qatar for the hostages.
There's red and green.
That's not true.
There's the red and green. All right, so let me back up and because we have short-term memory in America, let's go back and look a ways. We pulled out of Afghanistan, leaving $35 billion worth of military equipment behind. Right?
Right.
That was intentional.
Right.
When he pulled out, not only did we abandon it, but we abandoned the people. You're on your own.
Yeah.
That's exactly what's going on right now in America. If you haven't followed it, there's Americans over in Israel right now trying to get out, and the State Department has abandoned them. They're having to try to go through the embassies of the United Arab Emirates and those that have already made a peace deal with Israel. Not really peace deal, but you have an agreement with Israel, relations with Israel, let's put it that way. They're having to go through those consulates and things to try to get out of the land and fly to some Arabic country somewhere where they can hop a flight and get to America, because the State Department's pretty much abandoned them. They've actually, I saw an article a little earlier that they were requiring people, if you wanted any of our assistance, you have to sign this promissory note that you'll pay for it.
Well, they've been told to allow them to go to Egypt, but Egypt won't allow them to come in.
Yeah, Egypt's shutting down, and I understand the strategy behind that too. Keep in mind, Egypt is where the Muslim Brotherhood began. People continue to think that they're an ally. They're not. Now, they're going to do something. Well, Egypt warned them. Good old Egypt. Hang on. That's where the Muslim Brotherhood began. Now, the Egyptian government has considered the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist organization only because, what did I tell you Muslims argue about? Who's in charge and timing. Because the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt has always said that they're not what we would call radical enough, but and so they want to be in charge. But the goal's still the same. You guys follow? Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of playing the game with deception and timing. And so in any event, we left all that military equipment for the Taliban in Afghanistan. This is why, I didn't put the article in here, I don't think, but the Taliban asked Iran for permission to pass through Iran with all that military hardware to go fight for Jerusalem. Not Gaza. Jerusalem. Because that's That's why the Hamas attack was called the Al-Aqsa storm or the Al-Aqsa flood. And I have come to believe within the last week that the passage in Isaiah says when the enemy comes in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord raises a standard. This operation has been called by Hamas Al-Aqsa flood. Al-Aqsa is their name for the Temple Mount. Remember, Satan wants to sit in the sides of the north. I talk all this Sunday, so go back and watch Sunday's episode. Because that's what it's about. It's the throne. It's a game of thrones. That's what I was calling my message, was a game of thrones. It's a game of thrones. Satan wants to sit there, but God says it's mine. And so, but if you read that verse in Isaiah, I find it very, very, very interesting. I never really keyed on this word before. It says when the enemy comes in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord raises a standard. Yeah, we've quoted that every time we've had an attack by the enemy for one reason or another. But this specific operation is called the Al-Aqsa flood. So I want you to understand, I want you to focus on one word. Somebody quote that verse back to me.
When the enemy comes in
like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord raises the standard against it. All right, quote it one more time.
When the enemy
Stop. Quote it one more time.
When
Stop.
Hamas comes in
Quote it one more time.
When?
When is a time reference. When are you coming back, Lord? When the enemy comes in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord will lift a standard. What's the standard? What's that mean? What's it mean to lift a standard?
The flag.
Okay, it's a flag.
But the flag of, winning.
That's not it necessarily. Understand, in ancient times, the standards were the battle flags. Now, that could represent a unit, or later on after the battle's over, it could maybe victory, the flag of the wave of victory. But you're missing kind of the point.
Represents who they are.
Okay, there's a representation of who they are. It's kind of an identity, the standard of this particular unit or the other. But there's more to it than that. We're talking ancient times. Battlefield, what?
Ownership.
Okay, it's kind of similar to the identity. What?
Tribes?
Or yes, the tribes.
Don't you raise the standard so the unit
There, you're getting there.
can attack?
Yeah, there you go. It's communication. See, in the ancient times, go watch some of these old battlefield movies that are from medieval times. Okay, they didn't have a radio to call in an airstrike, right? How did they signal the troops to do what they would do? They would raise the standard, and everybody understood that signal. All right, if I raise this flag, then this particular battle group was supposed to go into formation. If I put this flag down, this left flank was supposed to go forward. The flags were signals and communications. Even on old Navy ships, even still today, the Navy has signal flags, all right, that they signal as they're docking, passing each other and all that, so signal flags. They didn't have radios, they didn't have satellites, they didn't have all that stuff in ancient times. Flags, the standards, were the battlefield communications. So when the enemy comes in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord lifts up the standard. That is a battle. The battle is commenced. Do you understand what that means? The battle didn't start. Watch these movies. Both armies would pull up here, and all the horses would stop, and they'd stop here, and this army would come up here, and all the horses would stop, and they'd stare at each other. Maybe one negotiator from each side would ride out to the middle and insult each other and then ride back. But the signal to go to battle was what? The flags. Boom. And that's when, charge! Everybody took off. All right, follow me, men. List the flag and charge. And all the armies came. When that scripture is saying when the enemy, Hamas, Islam, Satan, comes in like the Al-Aqsa flood, because they're playing King of the Hill. And Mount Zion is his throne. And Satan wants to sit in the sides of the north. So it is giving you a time reference that the battle is commenced. You guys understand what I'm saying? I believe with all my heart, this is not an accident. It's named Al-Aqsa flood. And I believe with all my heart, the battle flag has signaled it's begun. All right? So I expect the clock to begin ticking very quickly
Yeah,
over the next year.
yeah, this is the beginning of something big.
This
It's
is
huge.
going to
There's
be
no turning
big.
back. It's just
It's going to be big.
It's just gonna spread.
So A, the Taliban has $35 billion worth of American military equipment that do you think Iran will deny them? Iran wants Israel destroyed. They don't care who's doing it. They're going to use everybody. And so certainly they will allow them to cross. But there's been a lot of outrage because just last August, just like Obama had previously done, Biden gave Iran $6 billion in exchange for 5 hostages.
Yeah.
Now, we got the hostages, and they got the money, but the money was in an account. So the story of the administration this week was that money is still in the account and it didn't fund any of this. Well, that's a stupid argument. I mean, you guys all understand that's a stupid argument, right? Because first of all, you know, if I've got $10 to my name and I'm starving, I really want to go get a Big Mac, but I know I'm broke, I might be holding on to that at $10. But suddenly payday comes and the check's deposited in my account. What can I do with the $10 in my pocket? I can go get that Big Mac I wanted because I know I got the money in the bank. So saying that, oh, the money's still there, that's a dumb argument. I don't think anybody falls for that.
Yeah.
But there's been so much outrage on both sides about babies and women and children that even the Democrats have insisted that we try to refreeze the money. And so as of, I believe today, they worked out some sort of deal with Qatar to freeze the $6 billion that's still in the Iran's bank. Now,
So how does the Speaker of the House tie into all this? That has something to do with.
Well,
this.
that's-
They're trying to rush it, aren't they? They're trying to rush.
well, I don't
Is
know.
there something going on
It's
there?
really an attack against command and control
Yeah.
from that
But
standpoint.
think about it,
Oh,
the timing of the Speaker of the House and all of that.
Yeah,
That aspect of it.
yeah, there's definitely a command and control element in any
Yeah.
battle. So what's happening is they want that $6 billion. They're saying that you've got to give that to us. We already gave you the hostages, and under international law, they've got an argument. Now, what are the cases? What's the odds of us doing that? Let them go ahead and have the money. It would be political suicide to go ahead and let them have that $6 billion now. Now, earlier, you had people saying, oh, that's fine. But even the Democrats are throwing a fit at Biden and saying, freeze that money. All right? So it would be political suicide for him to unfreeze it. But under the international agreement, held up through international courts, and who's controlling those international world courts? The Organization of Islamic Countries is the largest member of the UN. How you reckon they're going to rule? You guys follow what I'm getting at? And if we refuse to do it, do you know what we just did? We provided grounds for. So there's games being played. There's strategies going into effect here. So just think about that. Now, Iraq. Well, wait a minute, Iraq's getting involved? Yes. Hezbollah. Wait a minute, isn't Hezbollah an Iranian group? Yes. What, in Iraq? Yes. They have vowed to target U.S. bases if Washington aids Israel. Well, are we going to aid Israel?
We better.
We already have. So, can we expect U.S. bases to be targeted? Okay. If a U.S. military position is attacked, that is a act of war. Folks, it's coming. I'm just telling you, we're getting very close. So what's next?
But they are going to hit the more
But the
important bases first.
military, the leadership that we have right now is not like how it once was.
No, it's not, and it will not be a war we will win.
And
Babylon the Great is fallen.
would you
That's where it's
consider
headed.
Tinker as being a critical base to?
Oh, absolutely.
eliminate?
Tinker's long been on
Yeah.
target zero for a lot of nations, not just the Islamic ones. But Because, and the reason is all of our communication aircraft, satellite aircraft, AWACS, radar, all that, our electronic warfare capacity, a lot of that's out of Tinker.
And don't fighters come in to get, for maintenance in
Oh,
the
yeah,
space
yeah,
as
they do
well?
all
Yeah.
kinds of that
Big
stuff too, but
maintenance,
the main
yeah.
claim to fame is if I want to cripple our ability to communicate and detect. That's the place, that's, yeah, AWACS and all that. Now, AWACS is being retired, they've got another one coming out, but anyway, don't get me caught.
It's
No, I'm
interesting
asking because I
that
live by Tinker and I've been
both the
praying
right and
about
the
that.
left seem to be
You
unified
know,
in
with
this
the war
right
coming
now.
and everything.
That's just
I
really
wanna live by
Thank
it.
you very much.
I will be taking for it.
One more time, just like World War II, the collective outrage will prompt action. See, what's the socialist playbook? Crisis, response, solution. I've got a solution that I want to implement, so I need a crisis. Once there's a crisis, people will cry for a solution. Here I am. That's what I'm saying. I firmly believe, and you know, if you're out there in Streamland, you wipe me off as a wacko and change channels, but I do believe the beast is behind it. The actual, real, live, breathing beast who has just not been revealed yet will step into the stage because this is strategic. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Israel-Hamas war likely to do what? Spark oil price volatility. So what does that mean? Well, we talked about Saudi Arabia. We talked, first of all, Yom Kippur War. Remember? Jimmy Carter. I'm Jimmy Carter.
Don't remind me.
All right. You're sitting in the gas line. You can't get gas. The whole nation's crippled. It crippled production. It crippled the economy. Remember how inflation was during that time? Think about what's going on right now. Folks, the thing that has been is the thing that shall be. There's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah.
But this time it's far more critical.
Mhm.
And here's why. First of all, the whole global economy is teetering, right? Now let me ask you, what has backed the American dollar?
Oil.
Oil. So when the oil volatility goes up, what happens to the volatility of the dollar? So what's going to happen is there's going to be an economic crash that will usher in
Great reset.
people calling for a solution to the problem. And you're going to see the beast system very soon. Hopefully we won't see it, but you understand what I'm saying, coming to the earth, because it's not just the volatility of the warfare, it's not just it's the economic impact, but this time it's to do away with the world's reserve currency. Right now the dollar is the world's reserve currency, but it's on its last leg. All the nations have been calling for a new one. We've talked about it week after week with BRICS and the different digital coins that different places are trying to do, et cetera, et cetera. Well, now you have a perfect excuse to implement it. You guys see that? So pay attention to what's going on with the oil and the dollar. Here's what, notice here, Russia and Saudi Arabia to continue the price pact despite the Middle East crisis. Most likely oil will continue to climb. Withholding oil will continue. What's that going to cost? Pushing crude to $100 a barrel. It'll probably go beyond that. Now notice, who are the two players? Russia. Russia is what type of political environment? Socialist, Marxist, communist. Oh, and who? Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is what? Islamic. Bing, bing. Do you understand what I've been trying to say all along? There is collusion between these two factions to bring this about, and they are going to continue to push the oil prices up because they both know they can collapse. They can collapse the world economy, particularly the U.S. economy, particularly the U.S.'s hegemony over the world economy. That's where this is going. Where are we at?
Yikes.
Well, because inflation was so high over the summer, over the last few months since COVID and all this, and gas prices were going through the roof, what did probably that too. What did Biden do? How did he bring down the oil prices that he was trying to campaign on? Our strategic oil reserves. Open the strategic oil reserves. What's the strategic oil reserves for?
Military.
The military. What's going to keep us defended? Same economic warfare strategy that Muhammad used against the Meccans in 629 AD, the Battle of the Trench. But notice, what's the current status of the U.S. Petroleum Reserve? I'm going to just scroll through there. There's the graph. That's kind of scary, isn't it?
He's been draining it.
Yeah, especially
Here's
with
what we've got. Here's the takeaway.
And we ain't been using it all. He's been giving it away
Trump's
too,
gonna
so.
replenish it.
Whoops, what did I just do? 17 days. We have 17 days reserve. See that?
Oh, dear
Right there in the
God.
blue.
Yeah, let's
As
see
of
where
last
see
week,
where the stops.
as of last week, we can only support 17 days
Dear
of war.
God. Dear God.
You guys understand? I'm telling you, it's coming. Babylon the Great does fall. So, oil, the oil dollar is going away. Whatever the beast system is coming, and it's coming rapidly. It's coming.
already set up.
It's set up. It's just waiting for launch. Remember, what's the argument about? Timing. It's all about the timing.
And God's timing.
Well, God's timing is overall.
Yes,
He
amen.
controls the timing overall.
That's it.
But when you see these things,
Yeah.
lift your head. He's telling you, I'm going to go back one of these days in my free time and just circle all the wins.
Yeah.
You know, I told you to circle all the untils. Might be a good idea to go circle the wins because the wins give you a definitive. When the enemy comes in, like the
Yeah.
Allox and flood, that's when the Lord lifts up the signal for battle. That's the signal that it's begun. Anyway, let's move on.
So do you think that, this country will be attacked physically from within all over?
I suspect that's coming, but I suspect the final blow will be nuclear. Yeah, after we're gone, is my belief. But I believe the final blow will be a nuclear type of incident.
Sun will be darkened.
One of the things, if you read Revelation, is the tradesmen who were made rich by trade with her. They stay far away from the shores for fear of her torment.
Eyes melt out of the head.
Eyes melt out of the head in Zechariah. It sounds nuclear, sounds radiation type thing. But let's continue here. So even if we went to war, if we've only got 17 days of oil, now let me ask you, how do you replenish oil? The administration, another article, I didn't include it, says now is not the time to replenish our stock because the prices are too high.
Oh, that makes sense.
We can't buy oil because it's $100 a gallon. If we tried to replenish all the oil we needed for the military, we're already $33 trillion in debt.
It would hurt our climate.
Well, it could,
more.
you know, those darn oil.
That makes sense.
You guys see how this all is lining up? I mean, this is a perfect storm, if you will, of events coming into play. All right, I am way behind the curve. All right. Lindsey Graham threatens Iran with war. Now, he's always been somewhat of a war hawk. He's threatened everybody.
I heard that.
But here's the deal. He's looking at the problems with the oil. He's looking at the problems with Iran backing Hezbollah, who's backing Hamas, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. However, and Iran is already threatening war against us. Hezbollah, Iran controls Hezbollah. If we A, assist Israel, or B, freeze their money and don't give it to them. So if we go war for war, that's all well and good except for one thing. What's NATO say if we go to war? What is NATO? What is
All of
NATO?
our allies have to come to war
All
with
of our
us.
allies have to come. What if Iran goes to war? her allies have to come too. Who's her ally?
Russia.
Bingo. Russia. Got it. North Korea. Russia. Russia's coming, folks. That's part of the Gog Magog. I believe we're seeing a setup for it all. So,
Where does
it,
China fit in?
huh?
Where does China fit in?
Well, later on, I believe they're referenced as the kings of the East. Coming over the river Euphrates as it's dry to prepare the way for the kings of the East. How they fit into it, I don't know yet. But as each passing day, things get a little clearer. We'll begin to see it. But again, China is again communist, socialist deal. Now they have been killing Muslims, and a lot of commentators going, "Oh, China, you know, they're persecuting these the Uyghurs, what." Uyghurs, I probably don't pronounce it right, but they're a Muslim minority in China. And so there's a lot of commentators think, well, you know, the Muslims aren't going to listen to anything China says because they've been persecuting them. That's very short-sighted and does not understand what the game is played. Their acceptable collateral damage in Islam is fine. Because as far as they're concerned, if you get killed during jihad or in the furtherance of Islam,
We get a lot of ladies.
that's your guarantee to paradise. Matter of fact, it's your only guarantee to paradise. So they care if people get sacrificed along the way. They do not. Matter of fact, they seek it. And so, you know, telling them to, right now, you know, Israel's been telling them, get out of Gaza, we're coming in, right? What's Hamas been telling its people? Stay put, don't move, or we'll kill you ourselves. It's just like the Romans did. You know, the greatest fear for a Roman soldier was not the enemy. It was his commanding officer behind him. Because if they failed to advance, the commanding officer would kill him. That's how they motivated the troops, so to speak.
But they are fleeing Gaza.
Islam did the same thing. And so you see this going on. But I'm just telling you, this could quickly escalate. Because once two parties go, it enacts all these contracts and treaties and compacts that. And so if the whole world is about to go to war, or even engages, what will be the call for peace? You guys see it? And what will make the peace? They need their state.
They're what?
Palestinians need their own state. We need to divide the land. That's what prophecy says happens. Then the temple. Remember what's the deal for the Jewish people? The temple. All right. What's the beast do? He goes into the temple. Why? Because it's a Game of Thrones. And this is rapidly accelerating. I'm telling you, this year
Muslims believe that their body will come back during
they do.
time of war.
They do, and their body fits all the descriptions of our beast. So anyway, I'm just pointing out, if you're not paying attention to the big picture on this, you know, I know it's heart-wrenching to watch what's going on, and there's a lot of stories about, you know, the babies that were beheaded and the women that have been raped and the soldiers beheaded and people kidnapped and tortured and all these things. But if you don't take a step back, you're not going to get perspective of everything else that's going on around it. See, one of the things, in Greek history, oh wait, this is so tough to do. In Greek history, there's the generals were called the strategoi. That's where we get the word strategy. The reason they were called the strategoi is because it's a word that means step back. See, what they begin to realize in Greek history by the time of Alexander, one of the reasons Alexander was so successful is he implemented this idea of strategoi. It was the idea that if you're in the heat of the battle, you can't think on the bigger picture. So what I need are people who are not in the heat of the battle. I need people who are back behind the lines, who aren't feeling the pressure, who are not being traumatized by the horrific images of war, who can continue to plot the broader strategy. And that's where we get the word strategy from, is the generals behind the lines. All right? And so what happens, first of all, we're not deep thinkers in America as a general rule. We don't look at the big picture or the long term. We look for the short win, right? Yeah, you know, it's everywhere. It's in our business culture. You know, the quarterly profit. You know, what's the quarterly number? That's all they care about is the next quarter. They can't think 90 days, past 90 days ahead. That's as far as we can deep plan. This is stuff that's been going on for years, folks. So in any event, it's distressing and emotional and traumatic to understand what's going on at a personal level, but you also need to take a broad view of all the other pieces, because the backfield is in motion. You understand what I mean? Okay, so let's continue. We got a long way to go and a short time to get there if we want to eat. So Iran-backed Hezbollah terror group is now fully prepared to join the war against Israel. Israel is an ally. Hezbollah is the forces of Iran. And if we end up engaging either way, it's going to bring Russia in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So Iran and Russia is probably two prominent players in the Gog-Magog war. So let's continue.
Don't you think they're purposely instigating a
Yes.
Can I say it? World War III?
Yes,
They're purposely
absolutely.
instigating it.
Absolutely. Iran calls on Islamic and Arab countries to confront Israel over its war on Hamas. So, trying to just bring in everybody. Hezbollah takes responsibility for the attacks on the Israeli military on the Lebanese border. Now, if you haven't been paying attention, there's attacks coming in from the north. That is very significant because Gog-Magog attack comes from the north. So what's happened is there's fears of a new second front as Hezbollah invades from the north. A new front depends on Israel's actions, says Iran. Now, if Iran goes in through the north, who's coming with them? Russia.
Oh boy.
That's Ezekiel 38, my friends. Right there. Israel, in response to Hezbollah's attack, targeted Syrian airports. Now, this is a very broad term, Syrian airport. What Syrian airport are we talking about? Damascus. What does Scripture say about Damascus? Ruinous heap. It's destroyed. As IDF strikes Hezbollah position in Lebanon after missiles fired at the border post. So it's heating up over there. Here it is. Israel conducts airstrikes at Damascus and Aleppo airports in Syria amid war with Hamas. Why is this significant? It's all there. It's everything there. That's why I'm telling you this, folks. You need to be getting people working the harvest, compel them to come in so we can tell them what's going on and get them right with the Lord.
I just had a thought. So,
Just one, huh?
yeah, I have several other things going up here. So, like, we hear that Magog, when it comes down, that they will be attacking unwalled villages. And we've always made this assumption that because it's peaceful. But what if the walls are destroyed, so now they can come through?
That's another
That's
reason.
how a lot of people kind of portray it as, it's peaceful, so that's when it's going to happen. But
They've brought it down. One of the things that I will say is the north, if you've been to Israel, and I know some of you have, is there a different climate between South Israel and Northern Israel?
Yes.
What's the difference? Because you go down to Gaza and South, West Bank, that's all walled villages. There's fences and security lines and bills. You get up into Galilee,
Pretty peaceful.
there's no walled villages. They don't have all those security borders, the security fences, all that. So, in my opinion, and I've taught this for a number of years, is I don't think it requires a peace treaty for them to come in for Gog and Magog, because Israel today, the north is unwalled and at rest. I mean, when you go to Israel, that's part of the reason the tour guides want to take you and spend a few days up in the Galilee, so you relieve a little tension from being down in Jerusalem and those areas where it's a little more tense, right? How many of you ever done that? You end up staying at some resort or kibbutz or something there in the north for a few days, usually on Shabbat or something. You'll be there and just kind of chill for a while, and the tension's a whole lot less. Why? Because it's the land of unwalled villages. And where does the enemy come in? Aha, let's go here. They don't have the defenses in place like they do. So in any event, here's what I was trying to get to, Syria. Now we know Scripture says Damascus must become, not Syria, Syria. Okay.
Okay, I found this online, but we know the scripture says.
Okay. And so, let me ask you, what happened to Syria a few years ago?
There's a lot of things could be said.
Yeah,
Maybe
that's
the
true.
thing
That's probably way too broad a
First thing I
question.
think of is that there's weapons hidden there, so when they get hit, it will cause a huge explosion.
Okay.
That's my first thought.
Weapons hidden there. If you'll remember right, back in the day when we did Desert Storm and went into Iraq to take out the weapons of mass destruction, where were they allegedly smuggled to? Syria. Now, a lot of people say, no, they never existed. It was all made up and all that. Well, I don't
We
know.
found a bunch of them.
But,
Just didn't say anything.
But there were Iraqi intelligence talking about generals that smuggled them out into Syria that I recall at the time. So you've got that issue. Second thing, what happened to the Bashar al-Assad here a few years ago?
Basically lost his power.
Okay, how did he lose his power?
Well, I mean, Turkey kind of like stepped in there and
Okay, Turkey started jostling
Yeah.
because they wanted to be the big dog on the street. But what began to spring up in Syria? An organization you shouldn't have forgotten about already.
ISIS.
ISIS, which stood for the Islamic State in Syria, right? Islamic State being the caliphate, the seat of Islam. Islamic State in Syria. So what happened is, who was supporting who?
Here's what I found.
We were supporting ISIS.
I don't know what you find.
What's that?
Weren't we were originally supporting ISIS.
Well, we've been on the wrong side of history a few times. We supported Al Qaeda before against Russia and all that, but as the regime of Bashar al-Assad began to crumble with ISIS trying to take over, who came in to prop up Assad? It wasn't us. Who came in to prop him up? No, I'm talking about a nation state. Russia. And Russia has been in Syria training their troops, providing them equipment, providing them weapons, and they have been joined at the hips in a mutual compact, military compact. So now you've got Israel attacking Damascus and Aleppo in Syria, which would cause Assad, with what little bit of power stroke that he may have left, to try to respond. And who's going to respond with him?
Russia.
That will be Russian troops, Russian military equipment, et cetera, et cetera. So where would they go? Into Israel.
So then Russia has two reasons to join. Whether it be
You're
us
starting to see the
as
picture. People wonder, why does
tradition,
Russia come in?
Or with being allies.
There's a
with
hook in his jaw. You know, a hook in a jaw means you don't necessarily,
Want to go.
wasn't really in your best interest. You got kind of drug into it.
Not
Well, the
to
way you
mention,
get,
there's a lot of Islamic people that live in Russia as
oh
well.
yeah, well that's what I was talking about when we talked about the
Yeah.
crumble and all the stand countries and all that. No, I'm not going to go there.
At the seminar.
That's a seminar topic. I was going to go back into the 19 teens when Muslims infiltrated Russia. Different day for different way. That's
You're
it.
right. You
They
can
use the
speak.
same plan here. They just come over here and did it here.
Oh, we need that seminar.
Yeah, one of these days. I've got to get it together.
Russian Revolution.
Probably soon. What?
Was that the Russian Revolution?
Yes, Trotsky and those. Yeah, that's when that began to take place. Yes, that was an Islamic orchestrated deal. And as a matter of fact, no, I'm not going to. Al Qaeda's number 2, al-Zawahiri. He actually went over to Russia before 9/11 to try to go. They thought they'd weakened him enough they could take it over, and Russia counter-assaulted him, and that he had to kind of flee. And he came back to bin Laden and he says, not yet. But let's try America. And that's when you got 9/11. So anyway,
Of whom I still believe is alive.
there's some collusion there. We'll just put that.
The way
So
his
anyway,
body was
moving on,
disposed of.
there's reasons for Russia to come in, and it's all right at our footsteps. Next up, mention this on the group app to everybody. Israelis are reporting armored vehicles approaching the border from Jordan, from the state of Jordan. Convoys of Muslim women and children evacuating from the West Bank. So let me touch on this. The West Bank is the world's term for what?
Judea and Samaria.
Judea and Samaria, particularly Samaria is what we're talking about here. What city is in Samaria? Judea, particularly Samaria. What big city that's in, biblically, it was one of the first cities. It was the first city the children of Israel took out when they came into the land. Jericho. Word Jericho means what?
Walled city.
No.
Because of walled city.
Nice try.
No.
Jericho.
Of moon?
Yerek? Moon. It was the city of the moon god. Who's the moon god?
Allah.
Baal. Who is? Allah. All right. Nothing has changed. Where's the seat? Where's the seat of the Palestinian Authority? Well, it's Ramallah. Yes, which is at what site?
Jericho.
Right by the ancient ruins of Jericho. City of the moon god. City of Allah. City of Baal. Right there. So what is on the other side of the border? The other side of the river, straight west, is the nation Jordan. All right, which was supposed to be the first attempt at peace. After 1948, after the war, the whole area of Jordan and Israel was allotted to Israel. They negotiated a deal where they would give the other side of Jordan to Jordan, and that would be the home for the Arabs, and then on this side of Jordan would be the home for the Jews. That was the first land for peace deal. How'd that work? Not so good, right? All the Palestinians today are actually Jordanians. They come over during those wars, and Israel kind of had to, they were insurrectionists, if you will. What do you call them? Fifth column insurrection, false flags. So all these people claiming to be Palestinians, they're just adopting that name Philistine, invader from the Romans. But they're really Jordanians, because that was the original land for peace deal. So right now, they're reporting that suspiciously, out of the clear blue, Muslim women and children started abandoning the city. Why? I don't know. And the next thing you know, there's a bunch of military equipment staging up on the other side of the river. Well, somebody knew something was going on,
Yeah.
right? So if they're staging over there, what's that an indicator of? A pending invasion, right? What's the only argument?
Timing.
Timing. Where did they come from? Are they Jordans? Or could they possibly part of the $35 billion military equipment that we left in Afghanistan for the Taliban?
Bingo.
So understand there's a role being played by these states. Golly, we're going to starve to death if I don't hurry.
Well, we can take a break and come back to this. Can't we?
J.P. Morgan Chase, CEO Jamie Dimon warns this is the most dangerous time for the world in decades. He is absolutely correct. He's worried about money. Weep and howl, rich man.
It's gone. It's gone.
But notice it is the most dangerous time in the world. What's going on? What's that mean? He's putting out the word. What do people, when there's danger, what do people want? Safety.
Security.
Security. How do you get that? Through war or through peace?
Peace.
Notice this. Expert warns World War III could begin by Sunday. This article came out yesterday.
So this Sunday.
He's reading the tea leaves saying this could all blow up by this weekend, day after tomorrow.
Well, today, I guess they started the ground invasion.
That's,
So,
yep, ground invasion's going on. So, again, folks, it's right at the doorstep.
So do you think that Jonas one
You
players?
mean before Christmas?
I hope not.
Yeah.
I hope not. Here we go again. Israel official calls for doomsday nuclear missile option. What does this mean? All right. So here let me back up. We got one guy saying this is the most dangerous position the world's been in a long time, right? He's exactly right. We've got the other experts saying that this could go south as quickly as this Sunday, day after tomorrow. And he's right. At the same time, Israel's officials saying, now this article is calling it the doomsday nuclear option, but what the Israelis call it is the Samson option. Have you heard the Samson option? No, really? Okay. I knew you would, Barb. Who's Samson?
From the
Strong
Bible.
man.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cut his
He
hair.
got his strength from his hair, but he destroyed himself when
Ah,
he destroyed his enemies.
okay. Samson, as you recall, was a judge of Israel, the book of Judges. He was from what tribe? Nope.
Levi.
Nope.
He wasn't.
Nope.
We give up.
What would be a very important tribe for our end time
Dan.
studies of prophecy?
Dan.
Oh, what?
Dan.
Dan. Dan. He was a tribe of Dan. Now, some of the rabbis say that one parent was from Dan and another parent was from Judah. That would be very interesting when we begin to look at when we did our beast study. If you remember, we discussed the possibility. That way, he could still be declared by the rabbis as Messiah because he's descended from the line of Judah. But he's actually the serpent Dan. That's the writer, by the way, Anyway, that's a whole other study we've done, I don't know, a long time ago. Why am
And
I
with the
saying
DNA, you could definitely tell where he's from
that?
now.
They've got the capacity to start doing some of that. So in any event, the reason I'm bringing this up, the Samson option, is not just about the judge and the idea of whether it's a Dan and Judah mix, which is what I expect to come down the line. But Samson, as you pointed out, in the end, first of all, he was blinded.
After his hair was cut.
Okay?
Well, they gouged.
Okay. When the covenant with the Lord was cut, he was blinded. I'm going to say it one more time. When the covenant with the Lord is cut, he is blinded. Israel is in a state of blindness today. There's a break between the covenant, the new covenant. You're still running under the old, but you understand what I'm trying to say. But the option was, he asked the Lord one more time for strength. He pushed the doors. They were all gathered in. They were all gathered into the temple of
Moon God.
Dagon, grain and fish god, in this particular case. But god of the Philistines that was adopted out of Babylon. Dagon was just the Semitic name for, help me out, what was that guy's Babylonian god? Enki. It was just the Semitic name for Enki. Was a water god from the abyss. Anyway, the abyss.
Yeah.
From the abyss. What's the beast come from?
The abyss.
The abyss. What was the temple that he shook it down? Same guy. He killed all the Philistines, and of course he perished as well. Now, why am I bringing this all? Is Israel going to perish? There's no way Israel's going to perish. They're secured by God.
Israel is forever.
But when you read Ezekiel 38, what happens to the hordes of Gog and Magog? Ezekiel 38, 39? They're obliterated, right? And it says their dead bodies are a stench, and they even call the graveyard the multitude of Gog. And then what's it say happens? Okay, how?
Well, they set up markers.
Okay, they set up markers. Who sets up markers? If
Well,
you
the
go
burial,
read this
yes.
passage, it says they separate men of continual employment. And when they see it, they flag it.
Contaminated.
It's contaminated. Bingo. That is the absolute protocol that we use for a nuclear or radiological event. is somebody suits up, the professionals, men of continual employment. You know what men of continual employment means? It means professional. That'd be an old ancient way of saying a professional, a man of continual employment. This is his profession. It's what he does. The professionals will come in and flag the areas because of the contamination of the radiation. And then the professionals, they can gather up and do a burial that eliminates, that's what do we do with spent nuclear fuel? Bury it deep. Deep. All right, that's what's going to happen, because if they launch the Samson option, that will obliterate the hordes, but they've got a radiation problem they're going to have to deal with. And that's exactly what's described in Ezekiel 38, 39. So I'm saying we could really be on the cusp of this very quickly. Saudi Arabia has put Israel deal on ice. And they're engaging with who? Iran. Well, Saudi Arabia is Sunni Muslim. Iran is Shiite Muslim. But Muslims agree on one thing. Yeah, kill the Jews and dominate the earth. The only thing the difference is, there are two things I told you they dispute. Timing and who's in charge. That's the dispute between Saudi and Iran, is who's in charge. Now, so a lot of people think the peace deal is done, right? Saudi Arabia has put the deal on hold. But wait. Remember this guy?
Oh my.
Kushner's popped back up. He's still got favorable contacts.
Interesting though, is also Ivanka Trump. She's one of the World Economic Forum leaders.
Yes, she is. Yes, she is. There's a connection
I
there.
thought she died. Ivanka?
No, she's talking about Kushner's.
daughter?
Yeah, the daughter,
Oh, okay.
Ivana.
Ah. Ivana.
So, notice Kushner has popped up and said, okay, we can pause, but don't give up on Saudi-Israeli normalization. Now, he's Jewish. It'd be interesting to know which tribes,
Yeah.
but let's continue. So he's called for this pause. What else is happening? Look at this. Arab ministers urging Israel to resume talks on the two-state solution. An emergency meeting of the Arab League calling for serious negotiations between the PLO and Israel. What? You mean to tell me all the Arabs are now in favor of this? See, this is what I've been telling you.
Because they know that
This
they're
did not
gonna
destroy the peace deal. This will usher it in. Bible prophecy is running rampant right in front of you.
Confirming what already exists.
Well, you had said on Sunday that they only do peace when they
They
know
are
they
too
can't
weak.
win.
That's right. And that's what the
So-
peace covenant with Israel will be.
Yeah.
That's why he breaks the covenant and all the world comes against him. You see, they're going to make the peace.
Uh-huh.
They're going to, the beast is going to take over. They're going to consolidate their power throughout the world. And then in the midst of the week, it's showtime. That's what's coming very quickly. So notice, so we've got Saudis, we've got Kushner popping up involved in this. We've got the Arab League. The Arab League is 57, I think, different Arab states. That's a lot of states, folks. That's a big bunch of the UN.
Yeah.
What's next? A Palestinian state is the most reliable solution, according to who? Russia. Notice who's reporting this. Al Jazeera. Islam and socialism coming into alignment again, pushing for the two-state peace solution. It's coming from Kushner. It's coming from the Saudis who said, no, we're going to pause. That's just a ploy. It's timing. It's timing. It's not over. They're just taking a step back and waiting for it to percolate a little bit. And then they'll step forward with the solution. Because everyone will be crying for one.
Yeah.
The Palestinians, the Arab League, all the Arab nations are pushing it. Now you got Russia coming out. And there's a whole lot of people in America that just want peace. They don't understand what the Bible, they don't understand what's going on. Folks, and Israel does too. It's coming. This is coming on our watch, folks. In the meantime, just a few other events. The United States is participating in a worldwide earthquake drill.
Earthquake what, drill?
Earthquake drill. It's called the Great Shakeout, and it is a worldwide, the largest earthquake drill ever. And if you want to participate, you can sign up right here. What's the Bible say about earthquakes worldwide?
More and more.
They're coming. Revelation specifically talks about great earthquakes as things are impacting the earth.
And I wonder if that'll come about through manipulation, that they'll purposely.
Whether it's a weapon.
Yellowstone's ready to blow any minute.
Yellowstone's ready to blow. How many of you even heard about this that happened this week? Massive earthquake killed 2,400 where? Afghanistan, Taliban. All right. Wall Street Journal. Now let's move into money. Hamas militants behind the Israel attack raised millions in what? Cryptocurrency. Well, that's interesting. Digital currency. Tracking who buys or sells. Now, look at this. I'm trying to hurry. I know we're hungry. Now, here's what I'm going to say. The headline is, did Bitcoin leak from an American spy lab? The subheading is, no, of course not. That's all conspiracy theory. Spreading online. Now, if you read the article, and I'm not going to log in the interest of time for it, and you have to have an account. What's happened is papers have been located from the National Security Agency, the NSA, from the 90s, proposing the digital Bitcoin system. All right? And it cites, remember, who's the founder of Bitcoin? What's the guy's name? Nobody knows who he is. He showed up. Yeah, it's a Japanese name, Okamoto or whatever, Nashimoto. He, that's the only name anybody knows. Showed up, disappeared. Nobody knows who he is, right? Well, guess what? There's the name in the NSA paper. The authors it is a very similar name. Now, what's interesting about this is the Economist is reporting on it. What's the goal of the Economist? You reckon? What's their focus? Money. They're based out of London, England, but they're worldwide. And they're a member of the World Economic Forum, and they're a member of all these global initiatives. So they're throwing a little bit of dirt on this conspiracy theory spreading online. Here's their reasoning for why it's a conspiracy theory. No, that can't be true. Because if you read those papers, not only are they proposing the digital currency and everything, but that also includes a system for tracking who's using it and who's buying and who's selling. And we all know that Bitcoin was developed to be decentralized, where you could do it anonymously. So therefore, it can't be true. This is all just conspiracy theory. Well, no. On the contrary, it was designed. They got you to bite off on it because they could throw it out anonymously and raise money for terrorist groups anonymously and criminals anonymously. But when they flip the switch on the beast system, they very much want to track who is buying and selling. But where did it originate? Who did it originate with? Babylon the Great. Okay. And who negotiated the peace compact between the Saudis and Israel? I just showed you this picture a moment ago.
Okay, yeah, that one guy.
Jared,
And what'd you say about him
it's
just
getting
now?
more and more interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
What'd you say about him just now?
He's the one that's involved in negotiating all the peace for Israel.
He is Jewish, of course.
He's Jewish. And this is American.
Is that 666 whatever?
So let's continue. I'm going to close with these last few ones real fast. The Chinese have a Bitcoin mine in Wyoming. Now, if you don't know what that is, what's a Bitcoin mine? Who knows?
Well, I think yeah, it
Big-
takes a massive amount of electricity and stuff too, just
That's right.
overwhelming.
That's right. A lot of electricity. Bitcoin is a digital currency, right? So how do you mine digital currency?
With computers.
With computers. What a Bitcoin mine is just a huge computer installation that does all the calculations. That's what a Bitcoin mine is. Chinese happen to have one in Wyoming, right next door to our nuclear base and right next door to the Microsoft data center. It's also happens to be a threat to the power grid
Oh, yeah.
all the way across the United States. Interesting.
That's really funny, you have a blackout and then you have no money.
Moody's. What's Moody warning? We're thinking about the human cost of the war. What's Moody's warning about? Economic resilience. What do they want to do? What did they do to us? What did Moody's already do to the United States?
Downgrade.
Downgrade. What are they getting ready to do to Israel? What happens when everybody gets downgraded? What happens to the system?
It crashes.
Bingo. This is coming very quickly, my friends. The godfather of AI says, you know, AI might escape our control by rewriting its own code to modify itself.
Well, that would make sense.
That
Hello,
would-
have you seen all the other movies?
Sure. Yeah, haven't you seen the movies? Where did those movies come from?
Yeah. AI.
Pre-programming, right? Continuing, but who's the problem? AOC says it's Christian fundamentalism. That's
I saw that.
That's the blame. I did not include all the articles I found blaming Christian ideology
Oh my gosh.
for the problem. Hamas admits that the ultimate aim of war in Israel is to eradicate Zionism, but also what? Rid those treacherous Christians from the world. Yeah, that's exactly where this is all aimed
So
at.
eradicate Jewish
The,
people.
the Quran tells Muslims, take no friends of Jews or Christians. They're friends of each other.
Big Satan.
Big Satan and the little Satan in Iran. There's a link. That's why Hamas called for the global day of jihad today. We talked about it. All they need to do is cause some economic ripples, which they accomplished, instill fear, which they accomplished. But does anything limit them to just today?
No.
Can they wake up tomorrow and start stabbing folks everywhere? Blowing things up, shooting people?
That's
Sure.
for them, for us to not be pre-warned.
They're
Exactly.
getting organized, they're
Yes.
just waiting for the
Yeah,
timing.
waiting for the timing. They don't care about dates. This is why it's so important that all this happened on an anniversary date. You know, the Yom Kippur War has been 50 years, and it's the same day that all this started. That only means something in a Western mindset. The terrorists, the Muslims, they don't care about anniversary dates. They never have. Americans always get ramped up on an anniversary date. It's the 10th year anniversary of 9/11. Everybody be on your toes. Well, they just love that. Oh yeah, we might come for you.
Exactly.
Because they don't care about anniversary days. They're happy to attack any day. One day is not any better than another. So the fact that this did happen on an anniversary date tells me that it wasn't planned by an Eastern mindset. It suggests Western influence to me. Doesn't necessarily mean I'm right. I'm just saying if I was looking at it from an analyst perspective, based off of everything I knew about terrorism and trained in terrorism and taught on terrorism back in the day when I was in the game, we disregarded anything that, not disregarded it, but we understood that they don't care about anniversary dates. That's something Americans and the West cares about.
Well, doesn't God care about dates as well?
Well, certainly God does.
And so it being on a date, wouldn't that mean that he's...
Understood. God's in ultimate control of the day.
Yeah.
But he has the foreknowledge to know what they're doing. You know what I'm saying? God's ultimately orchestrating everything for the ultimate good. But just the fact that all this occurred on anniversary day, everything that happened showed evidence of outside planning and resources and funding and all this.
Exactly.
And it came from somewhere.
Yeah.
Everybody's blaming Iran and all these others, which have culpability for sure,
But we funded them.
but they're not alone. There is a global, deep, dark force at work. And the fact that it was keyed for anniversary dates suggests to me somebody from a Western way of
Yes,
thinking
yes.
was involved. That's just a suggestion, doesn't mean it's true, just throwing some things out. Real quick, I'm running out of time. As you know, he called for the global uprising, asking for blood and souls to be sacrificed. That's interesting. And he called it the Al-Aqsa flood. When the enemy comes in like a flood, that is when the Lord lifts the signal. This is, I'm telling you, I believe we've entered the phase, folks. Things are going to happen very rapidly from here on out, I believe. Hamas official mocked for falsely claiming terror group didn't kill any civilians. This just shows...
Because no one's a civilian to them.
That's exactly right. This shows an incredible amount of ignorance because, for two reasons, they're not considered civilians. And I posted this on the group me for those that are on that probably saw it. Because what happens is, if you pay taxes, your taxes go to fund the military. That makes you a financer of the military. That makes you an enemy combatant in Islamic doctrine. When we go after a terrorist, we go after the terrorist and the terrorist financiers. They make the same moral equivalence in their doctrine, saying we go after the civilians who fund it. Because you're not civilians. You're an enemy combatant. Okay, so attacking civilians, they denied attacking civilians in 9/11. Why? Because those taxes fund our military. Therefore, we're enemy combatants according to Sharia law. That's a long-standing ruling in Islam. It's been around for centuries.
Although the babies didn't pay taxes.
Well, but they are dependents in calculating the tax. But I get what you're saying. I'm not saying I agree with their doctrine. I'm just telling you, you need to know what the enemy thinks. Because the enemy doesn't act on what you think.
Well,
The enemy acts on what they
and
think.
the enemy doesn't think that women and babies are anything
That's
except
true.
spoils and war.
That's true.
So
Booty.
we're
Yeah.
just objects.
Actually, they don't
not
even believe
people.
women are
Exactly.
people.
Or like
They
nothing.
don't-
Property.
well, not just that, but they don't believe women have souls.
Oh, right.
They don't believe they have spirit. That's a whole other story for another day.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get into it. No, it takes a while to go through all that. You know,
Walk Sunday.
what's that?
Seminar.
You need the seminar. That's right.
You said a lot of this on Sunday, though. You guys.
Yeah, some of this you can pick up on the Sunday if you go back and just
November
watch Sunday.
seminar.
So anyway, that's one reason that they can sit there with a straight face and tell you they didn't kill any civilians, and they're telling the truth from their perspective.
Yes.
And that's why they can lie to your face. And if you don't know any better, see, today we know better. Everybody saw all the casualties on TV, right?
Yep.
So people know better. They know, oh, that's a lie, and they mock. Well, you're just like, well, yeah, you get it now. But they've been lying to you all along. You didn't know better, because they're using words like, yes, we want peace. And I've already explained to you what peace means in Islam, right? It means when there's nobody else left to fight. I've killed them all. That's what it means, or dominated them all. And so, yeah, they've been lying to you all along. You just don't know any better. Taqiyya. It's the deception in war. It's authorized in the Hadiths by Islam. The deception in war, deception between spouses, deception between Muslims is all okay. So anyway, yes.
That last slide where you said they were taking souls. Did you follow through?
I didn't, just in the interest of time. Blood and souls, isn't that an interesting phrase? Yeah, it is. The life is in the blood, we understand that, you know, the spirit and the blood, the soul, all that sort of stuff. I've talked to you before about, remember when I did you the discussion of Ezekiel about the souls that were bound, and I told you I believe it's mind control reference. Remember when we talked about that? MK Ultra and CIA and all that, and you thought, he's really, the cheese is done, slid right clean off the cracker with this guy. Blood and souls, these people are deluded, my friends. These young people who are pulled into Islam or convert to Islam are indoctrinated, they're deluded, they're deceived. It is a form of mind control. For someone to strap on a suicide belt and go detonate themselves, believing that that is their entry into paradise and plenty of virgins to sexually serve them, you're under a delusion. When you can go murder women and children and decapitate babies and feel justified in doing it, you're under a strong form of mind control. That overrides basic human empathies, emotions, basic I mean, there is God's given everyone a measure of conscience or understanding that. But if I begin to justify why they're not human, why they're not innocent, why that I can go and cut the heads off of babies, you're
With
looking at it
shovels even.
with everything.
Well, they're worshiping Satan. And
Well,
they're
exactly,
demonized.
and that's the whole
Fully
point.
demonized.
It is a form of mind control, and that's why blood and souls and the idea of Ezekiel, the souls that are bound, and by tie back to MK Ultra and CIA and all that. I just don't have time to go into all that, but that's the quick down and dirty. Is they're deceived. They're under a strong delusion, and that is a form of mind control when you begin thinking about souls, blood and souls. All right, next up. So I told you one reason is they say if you're paying taxes, you're an enemy combatant, right? That's how they apply it to everybody in the world, whether it's the United States or anybody. But there's a second reason they apply it in Israel. If you live in Israel, you turn 18, what happens?
You go fight the military.
It's a compulsory military service in Israel, right? Everybody serves, male or female, at minimum of 2 years, some 3, and some more, right? But it's mandatory. Now, what happens after you serve your 2 or 3? You're in the reserve, subject to what? Be called up. What just happened when they went to war?
Yeah, they called out.
They called everybody out.
300,000.
They called
Even in other
everybody out.
countries.
So therefore, any civilian living there is subject to call out into the reserve and to help IDF fight, because there's only so many Jews, right?
Yeah.
So in Sharia's mindset, not only do their taxes fund the military, but they are. That's why they say all we killed was IDF. That's what they said. All we killed were soldiers of the IDF. And in their mindset, you see, there's a logic to what Satan does. It's just infuriating that people are deceived into it.
Justifying.
It justifies it in their mind. It's back to that mind control, blood and souls. Because now, well, they are enemy combatants. And if I let that baby live, he's going to be an enemy combatant too.
Yeah.
You see, that's how they do it. And so if you get everybody to believe that in their mind, under that strong delusion, then they can go forth and carry out all kinds of atrocities and never give it a second thought. Same thing happened with the Nazis.
That's a way of devaluing.
What's that?
Devaluing.
Devalue and dehumanizing people, absolutely.
Which is totally against God.
Totally against God, but a very, very specialty of the enemy. All right, I've got to go.
They're pure evil. is what
Pure
they are.
evil, yeah, there's no other deal. Meanwhile, Biden has lost 99% of all the illegal immigrants that have come into the border.
Oh, that makes sense.
Oops.
Lost track of 99%.
Yeah,
Now, this is the report released by the House Judiciary Committee, Immigration Subcommittee, released a report highlighting the disclosure that 99% of illegal immigrants are not tracked and the government has lost contact with them. Because the deal was they were going to let them in and tell them, well, you need to be at court later.
Yeah.
right.
99%,
Sure.
nobody knows where they're at.
Sure.
So who are this?
Hamas.
Islamic.
Thousands of fighting age men from the Middle East have crossed into the U.S. during Biden's border
Yeah.
crisis.
Oh, Lord
Top U.S. military officials and Americans have been taken hostage over in Israel. We already knew that. GOP report, Biden welcomed 4 million illegal immigrants within the last 26 months. Now, clearly, not all of them are, there's probably some decent people out there,
They had to camouflage what they were doing.
mowing the lawns and, doing whatever, but there's a whole bunch of folks
How could
that are
someone
unaccounted for.
be the president?
So what do you expect will happen next here? You guys follow? It's just a matter of timing. I said all that to say this. Everybody knows this is happening tomorrow, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think this is significant.
Yeah.
This is a solar eclipse. You should be able to see it from here at about 11:30 tomorrow morning. All right? Now, you guys all know, don't look at the sun in the solar eclipse, right? You do a
Solar
little pinhole thing.
glasses.
Or have the glasses. I had some glasses. I don't know where they are, but do a little pinhole or whatever. Why is this significant right now?
Because the moon
It's
is
a sign to
Okay.
the nations.
That's right. That's right.
Say it again.
Genesis says that the sun, moon, and stars were created for signs and for seasons. Okay, for signs and for seasons. Seasons pretty much apply to everybody, don't they? Greeks seek after wisdom, but
Jews a sign.
Jews seek after a sign. They're for signs and seasons. What causes an eclipse? A solar eclipse. The moon blots out the sun. Rabbinically, who does the moon represent? Israel. Who does the sun represent rabbinically?
Nations.
The nations. What's about to happen? The moon is about to blot out the sun. So what happens when the enemy comes in Gog Magog? When they all line up on the border, who wins? The nations
No.
No.
or Israel? What happens? They blot them off the face of the earth. The moon is blotting out the sun tomorrow. Rabbinically, that would be an indicator that Israel is about to blot out the nations arrayed against it. That could be an indicator of a very soon Gog-Magog event. I'm not saying it is, I'm just saying it could be. It's interesting that we have a solar eclipse, not a lunar eclipse. With everything going on, you might expect a lunar eclipse.
Right.
Look, Israel's under attack.
Yeah.
But instead we have a solar
Yeah.
eclipse. Now I know there's people out there going, "You're just a nut.
No.
Who cares?" Eclipses, that's just astronomy. This happens. I get it. But God created those things, and He put them in orbit thousands of years ago, and He's pretty good at calculating time Himself.
Yes, he is.
And so I find it very interesting. We have this solar eclipse. And if the solar represents the nations, as is rabbinically thought, and the moon is Israel, then that's a sign to the Jewish people that they are about to come out victorious over the nations.
So the Islamic people don't even look at that stuff. Like they didn't purposely go,
They-
we're going to attack now so that this will actually happen during that
Yeah,
time.
no,
They
they
don't do that either.
they
They're just really
do, but they have a different.
calendar.
No. Well, yeah, they do have a different calendar, but that's not part of the calculus. They have a different interpretation of the signs. Who's the moon god?
Yeah, exactly.
Who's the moon god? Allah, Baal. If the moon is about to blot out the sun,
Perfect
how
time.
do they interpret it?
It's time for us to go.
Allah is about to take over the nations. Allah is about to take over the
They're in
earth.
for a big surprise.
Yeah, they're in for a big surprise. Well, temporarily, the beast does take over the earth,
Yeah.
but doesn't last for very long. But in any event, that's their interpretation. So whether they calculated it in time with this or not, I don't know. I can't speak to that.
The Lord knew in advance.
The Lord knew a long time ago, right? So I'm going to suggest to you that we may be very near a Gog-Magog situation, and let's just play. If you play out that idea, if Israel did obliterate all the forces arrayed against it, with the Samson option. There will still be cries for peace because there's been a whole lot of damage done. And there will be this deal if there's any survivors, these Palestinians, these Arabs or stuff, you just commit, the world's going to accuse them of a massive genocide. I mean, basically, you dropped a nuke on them. You at least owe them a little bitty parcel of land they can live on.
Yeah, and think about the Antichrist is gonna come along and make everything
Yeah,
better.
yeah. So, like I said, I see events lining up quite remarkably for Bible prophecy, and I don't think it's going to be a long haul. And that's why I posted the deal about the raindrop, you know. And, 44 minutes, it's only 7%, but 49 minutes you've drowned. And I think we're going to start seeing very rapid stuff from this point on. Doesn't mean I'm right. I'm as fallible as the next guy, but I'm just
Tacos.
reading. What's that?
Tacos.
Tacos, that's right. That's the Greek word for it. Speed. All right, I'm going to stop right there. If you're out there, we're going to take a break and finally get a snack, I think. And then I may even come back and talk about Daniel. We'll
It's
see.
breakfast time.
So maybe breakfast time now, right? So I'll put up the old slideshow if you want to stick around. I'm not sure how much longer we'll go. I know the time is run, but a lot of things are significant. I think
Oh, yes.
this is important enough
Yes.
Yes,
that we need to talk about it
yes,
and understand it, what's going on,
Yes.
and watch it out there.
excellent.
So I'm going to put up the old slideshow here, and we're going to take a quick break. We will be back in, where's my little timer? I got to set my little timer. There it is. We're going to be back in about maybe 15 minutes, and either do a little bit of study or close or something. I don't know what we'll do. So if you want to hang on, be sure to join us then. We'll see you here in a minute. Whoops.
Yeah, and I started telling the story and then like I said, a boyfriend, people go over here, like,
It's always here.
I had a boy, but that's what it is.
Oh, it pops up. Yeah, yeah, roll around.
Yeah, that's what he said. One day, I know, his Of course, they told him
I
to
wouldn't give
really,
him
really,
a
really,
So, well, I probably have some, see that I buy stuff and then I kind of bring it up here and then I don't.
But like I said, he goes, we got from action, I'm gonna keep up with it. And they told him it can't take up.
Okay. Well, we're back.
The next day, they're going
Had some food and all that. Maybe you got some too. We spent quite a bit of time on updates tonight just because the world is rapidly moving toward the fulfillment of Bible prophecy. And you need to know Yeshua. You need to know Jesus. If you're not on board, he's coming pretty quick, and he doesn't come back happy, by the way. So you might want to be on the right side. I encourage you just to admit that you've not lived up to God's ideals and believe that he is exactly who he said he is. Call and confess him as Lord today while there's still time, because you could easily find yourself in a really bad world situation before much longer. So with that, we don't have a lot of time, but I do want to at least address a verse or two, just so I feel like I got there. So we're going to pull up the book of Daniel real quick, and it's been a while since we've been there. But last time we were together, we were talking about verse 11, and I went through quite a bit of stuff that probably would mean more today to you than it did the last time we were together. Because if you'll remember right, last time together I was telling you about the lineage of the folks between Balshazzar, and we talked about the gods that they worshipped, and how their emblems still are on the flags today of Persia and Iran. If you'll remember the lion flag I showed you with the sword and the beheaded head, that was probably means a little bit more to you today than it did the last time we were together. So if you're thinking, what in the world's he talking about, I encourage you to go back and watch those videos, because I can't reteach all that in the time I've got. But those same gods that required beheading and sacrifice and all that back in the day are the same ones active today that are imposters of the Most High. So I won't go back over that ground again. I will just kick back off with verse 12. If you'll remember right, Daniel has been called forward. And the queen mother has told Belshazzar that there is a guy who can interpret the dream, or interpret the writing on the wall. It says, "Forasmuch as an excellent spirit and knowledge and understanding, interpreting of dreams, showing of hard sentences, and dissolving of doubts were found in the same Daniel." It's always important when it says the same Daniel, because we have a lot of scholars that try to revise the Bible, spread it out as being written over multiple years, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And well, there was this Daniel, but there's probably one who lived hundreds of years later that was, blah, 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 blah. And whenever the Bible says this same one, it's telling you it's the same one. Why is that important? Well, actually, Yeshua does this for you with the book of Isaiah. Most scholars today in seminaries teach that the book of Isaiah was actually written by two different Isaiahs over a prolonged period of time, and they try to come at that through what they call higher textual criticism. That ought to be your first clue. They don't know what they're talking about, but that's what they try to say, and they try to teach everybody this, and then that messes up a lot of things doctrinally, because you begin to look at problems with timelines and stuff like that. And it begins to erode people's faith in the Word of God, and they think they've proven problems and contradictions and all that. Well, the problem is your premise was wrong. You proceeded from a false premise. That's why it didn't work out for you in the end. Jesus actually quotes Yeshua in the Gospels. he quotes a passage. The scholars try to divide Isaiah between chapter 39 and 40. That's very interesting to me because there's 66 chapters in Isaiah. How many books of the Bible are there? 66. But they notice, all right, 66 books in the Bible. How many books in the quote, quote, Old Testament? How many books in the quote, quote, New Testament? 39 and 27. Guess where the scholars try to divide Isaiah? Chapter 39. They say these first 39 chapters were written by one Isaiah, and these last 27 were written by another Isaiah. Do you know why they say that? They say because the tone is so much different in those last chapters that it must have been somebody else. Well, there's a parallel. The tone is different between the Old Covenant and the New Covenant. But in any event, I digress. But Yeshua saves you from all that because he quotes a verse from what scholars say is Isaiah 1. He quotes a verse from the first 39 chapters. And then a little bit later, like he says, and that same Isaiah also said, and he quotes another verse from the last 27 chapters. And so if Yeshua, the Lord knows what people are going to try to do.
Yeah.
If you'll just read him, he's covered the basis. He understands what's coming. This is why I tell you that Islam, if you saw my message on Sunday, I told you that the verse identifying God was very specific when it said that there is no darkness in him. God is light, and in him there is no darkness at all, neither shadow of turning. That's a very specific verse against Islam and Allah. Islam is a moon god. If you look at the moon, do you realize that there's one side of the moon that is never facing the earth because it doesn't rotate? What's that side of the moon called? The dark side of the moon. In him there is no darkness. And then it says, neither shadow of turning, which, what does that mean? Well, how do we portray the moon throughout the months? What does it do? It waxes and it wanes based on the orbits of the earth and planets, the shadow. And so God is telling you, this is a very specific reference that he is not the same God as Allah. He is the Most High, and the other is an imposter. Same problem in 2 Kings 18, when Elijah challenged the prophets of Baal. If Baal be God, worship him. If Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh be God, worship him. And they didn't answer him. Because I thought, well, wait a minute. The same one? That's what everybody tells us. All the Jews, the Christians, they all worship the same God. They may all worship one, but it doesn't mean it's the same one. All right? Yes, they may all consider themselves monotheistic religions, one God. Doesn't mean it's the same one. And that's exactly it. And I'm telling you with all my heart, the reason that verse is in there is to tell you, don't fall for this, because God is all light. In him there is no darkness at all, neither shadow of turning. Shadow of turning creates the crescent moons. When Gideon engaged the Midianites and slaughtered them, remember there's that saying in Psalms, may they be like Zael and what was the two princes of Midian that were slain on the rock? You know what portion I'm talking about? That's a prophetic reference. I'm not going to go there because I'm trying to just do this. But remember when he took all the booty off of their camels? What did they have? Crescent moons. Why? Nothing has changed. So there are verses in the Bible that preempt heresies to come if you understand them when you see them and read them. And I'm going to tell you that there's probably several verses in the Bible that I believe are included specifically as a counter to Islam in the end days. But I don't think people recognize it for that, or recognize that meaning. That'd be something I'd have to slip into next seminar. Right? Let's get back to this.
In November.
whatever. And so he has excellent spirit, excellent knowledge, excellent understanding, excellent interpretation, and shows hard sentences. What's that mean? He just solves riddles. And he dissolves doubts. When you have no doubt, you have what?
Faith.
Okay, faith. Good. Yeah, absolutely. That's the best answer. I was going to say certainty. Because once something, when you no longer have any doubt, you're certain of something, right?
Yeah.
And so this is why he's being advertised as this. Is once he, not only is he smart, not only he's got this knowledge he's an intercessor, but when he tells you, you can be certain it's the truth. Verily, verily, I say unto you, right? And so that's what dissolving of doubt means. The funny thing about this word dissolving of doubts, if you look at this word here, shereh, it's shereh for dissolving, of doubts, qatar, a knot, joints. Everybody see that? Remember a while ago, earlier in the chapter, when the hand showed up on the wall, what did Belshazzar do?
Oh, yeah.
The joints of his loins were loose, right? He called for his brown breeches, if you remember the story. Guess what's the same word? Dissolving of doubts uses the same phrase. So it's almost like a gig at the king. Oh, by the way, I know you pooped yourself, but there's this Daniel guy that can dissolve those loins for you, straighten up that loin problem you got. That's kind of funny, I thought. Anyway, moving on. Same Daniel, not a different one. But here's what's interesting. Notice what she says. This same Daniel, whom the king named Belteshazzar, remember, Bel protects or Bel honors. And then she says, now, let Daniel be called. He will show you the interpretation. Notice something happened. This is the name he was given, but is she using it? No, she's calling him Daniel. She calls him Daniel here. The whole time she's calling him Daniel. Notice, that's the same thing Nebuchadnezzar did in his. He would call him Daniel. And then to clarify who he's talking about, he goes, he is also called Belteshazzar, right? So I find it very interesting that that they continue to use his Jewish name throughout this. So Mom's advice is to call this guy, and he's going to show you what this means, and you can be certain. And I like this. He will show. That's a faith statement. It says he might be able. She didn't say he might be able. He says he will. He will. So I'm going to move ahead because I'm going to get a couple verses in here. We've talked about what spirit, knowledge, and understanding means before in the past, right? So I don't have to retread those grounds. But we talked about time, future, present, past tense stuff, and all that. Verse 13. Then was Daniel brought in before the king. And the king spake, and he said unto Daniel, Art thou that Daniel, which are the children of the captivity of Judah, whom the king, my father, brought out of Jewry? Now, he knows who he is. So why would he say this? Think about this. The king, Belteshazzar, he's supposed to be the top dog, isn't he? All right? But he's been humbled here. He's already pooped his pants. He can't make sense out of what's written on the wall. None of his advisors can help him. And he's going to have to rely on a Jewish captive. Yeah. So really what's happening here is he is doing his best. Yes, exactly. He's doing his best to try to establish his line of authority and dominance. He knows who this is. The queen done told him who it is. They called for him. They intentionally brought him. He doesn't have to ask him, are you Daniel? He's not asking him, are you Daniel? He's saying, aren't you Daniel that were the captives that my father took prisoner and brought out of the land. He's trying to.
Degrading. Yeah.
Yes,
Trying to
it's
make
a
himself feel
degrading. It's a tactic. It's a manipulation tactic. Is what it is.
Trying
Because
to make him look better.
yeah, he's going to make himself look.
Yeah.
But see, because what's he going to do? What's he going to do for Daniel if he can interpret this?
He's going to make him third in kingdom.
Right. So notice he's going to try to make him think he's real lowly and you're just a captive here. Hamas has got hostages right now in Israel. Do you think they're building them up? Or do you think they're degrading them and breaking them
I
down?
don't
Sure.
want to think about what they're doing.
That's exactly what's going on here. He's trying to break them down because then it's going to make him look like his source. Who can build me back up? I am a captive. I was beaten. I was taken out of my land. The only person I can rely on for favor is this king. He has the power. You see what I'm saying? There's some psychology going on here that I think you would read past if you don't stop and think about what's going on. When I do a interview in criminal investigations, there are different types of interviews, and I conduct them in different ways. And no one interview is the same. There's different tactics to interviewing people or interrogating people. And, I might interview a suspect one way. I might interview a witness a different way. I might interview a victim another way, right? And so even amongst suspects, some suspects are cooperative, some suspects aren't cooperative, some want to confess, others don't, So you may handle the interview even amongst suspects differently from one to one. But one of the things we do when we run into a obnoxious suspect who's not cooperative is I want to establish who's in charge right up front in the interview. And so the way I structure the wording of the questions and the dynamics of the room and the way things set up is to make the point that I'm the authority in the room and I have the power to place you under arrest and put you in jail or make recommendations to the prosecutor that you were cooperative or, I have certain discretionary things that I can either do or not do. And you just try to establish who is in charge in that room. Now, if I've got a suspect that's just totally remorseful, the kind that comes in and turns himself in at the police station because they did something that you didn't even know was a crime yet. You know what I'm talking about? And they're probably they're wanting to give it up. Now, do I come down like a ton of bricks on this guy? No. What am I going to be? Hey, come on, let's talk about this. I'm going to build a rapport and show compassion and all these sort of things to find out and get the information because he's willing to provide it. So I recognize when I read this a dynamic being played. The king is in here. He has been humiliated in front of all of his nobles. Remember, they were all gathered there, and he just pooped himself in front of them all. He's got this writing on the wall. Nobody knows what it means. None of his wise men can do him. His only hope happens to be this Jewish guy. And he wants to create the idea. He's not trying to talk about this to build enmity between them. Like, my father conquered you. Don't you hate me? That's not his goal. His goal was you were brought out of captivity. I remember my father, he captured you and brought you out of the land. But I'm king now. And if you can tell me what this says. So he's kind of bribing him a little bit. He's manipulating him. And he's a king. He's dealt with these things. So let's continue. All right. So he's slighting him a little, kind of putting him in his place, and then he's offering himself as the solution. That's a real common manipulative type of a tactic. So, I will point out one thing here. Notice how he says that the king my father brought out of Jewry. Remember, Nebuchadnezzar didn't take anything. It was given to him by the Lord, and they were given into his hand. So I just want to make sure we recall that. The other thing that's interesting is as he continues, he's going to repeat what his mom told him. He says, I have even heard of thee. Now he's going to start that build-up process. All right? That the spirit of the gods is in thee. Now, you remember we debated on whether it's God's plural or God's singular, what they meant. But here's the difference between him, what he's saying, and what Mom said. Notice what Mom said. There is a man in the kingdom in whom is the spirit of the holy gods, and then we made the debate on whether this is actually a plural or a translate, whether it's a singular. There's debate among scholars as to what she intended. But notice she called it the spirit of the holy gods, but when he talks, he simply says spirit of the gods. So there's Nebuchadnezzar showed Daniel honor after his transformation, right? Showed him honor after the dream of the image as well. Mama remembers these things. It seemed like she was shown a little honor too, but he's not quite there yet. I've heard that in thee is the light. Do you remember last time we were together, we spent quite a bit of time talking about the light in Daniel. We discussed the messianic light and the light of revelation and all that. If you don't remember that, go back and watch that again. Understanding and excellent wisdom, because we were making the point that understanding is a past thing, wisdom is a future thing, and light happens to be pretty much an eternal thing. Yeah. So notice it didn't mention a present tense. We're used to seeing understanding, knowledge, and wisdom, which is past, present, future. But here we have past, future, and eternal. There's nothing in here about the present. You know why? Because this present situation is about to end. Captivity's over. He's going down. That's what this writing on the wall is about, and that's what happens that very night. So it's interesting how these things begin to line up. So anyway, verse 15 says, now the wise men, the astrologers, remember we talked about the difference between all these, the Hakim and the Ashaf and the spells that they would do and all that. I've taught on that several times, so I'm not going to go back over that. They've been brought before me that they should read this writing and make known the interpretation. So two things, right? Read it and interpret it. There's a lot of Hebrew I can read, but I don't know what the word, I can't interpret it. You know what I'm saying? There's people, you can sound out the letters, but you need a vocabulary to interpret it. And so we've talked about in previous sessions whether this was written in some type of Atbash code or whether it was angelic script, Enochian script, all these different ideas that have come up from all these different people. But either event, he's saying they could not show me the interpretation of the thing. And so that may indicate that they could read it but not interpret it. But we're not sure. I wouldn't hang my hat on that. But I can tell you that he cares a whole lot less about it being read than he does about it being interpreted. Because that's what he brings up down here. I have heard that thou can make interpretations, dissolve doubts, and now if thou can read the writing and make known to me the interpretation, thou shalt be clothed with scarlet and have a chain of gold about thy neck, and thou shalt be the third ruler in the kingdom. So we discussed third ruler because why? Yeah, dad is king and he's in charge while he's gone, and now he would be third. And so that is all good. And so we if you interpret with certainty, read and interpret all that. We've talked about the idea of scarlet. I think I brought out to you before that if you go into the Septuagint, it's translated purple. You guys remember that? So we talked about the difference with purples and scarlet being how long the dye is left in some cases. Creates the difference. But the idea of being clothed in scarlet with chains of gold is a royal thing that has gone for a long time. And I think I made some other allusions in there to Rome, another Babylon, clothed in scarlet with chains of gold. And when you begin to look at the papacy, the cardinals, and all that sort of thing, but we won't go there tonight. Matter of fact, I'm gonna just probably stop here because I've got a lot of things to say about this next verse. So when we come back, we're going to tackle verse 17, assuming nothing else is. I have no idea what the week holds, right? So then Daniel answered and said before the king, "Let thy gifts be to thyself, give thy rewards to another. Yet, nevertheless, I will read the writing, and I will make known the interpretation." So basically what Daniel does here is he doesn't fall for the power dynamic. He comes out from under the power. That's exactly right. He is showing himself to be a free man. Yeah.
He corrects the thought.
And yep.
But at some point, isn't this where at some point he says, "Yeah, Nebuchadnezzar, he was."
Yeah. He's gonna put him in his place. Says, "Yeah, Nebuchadnezzar, he was a king, not like you." He's going to reverse the power dynamic from this point on, and I think this is really cool because it shows me that he was full of wisdom and understanding, and he not only understood secrets of but he understood people. He recognized what Nebuchadnezzar was doing here. He's trying to establish a power dynamic. Let me fix this for you. I'm going to put you right back in your place. All right? No fear. No, that's a total faith statement right there. So Snow White, why don't you keep all that? But I'll tell you what. I'm still happy to tell you what it means. You know why he's still willing to tell him?
Bad news.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You're going down. You know what? If it had been God's going to bless you and magnify you and all that, he might have still told him, but he probably wouldn't have been as jubilant about it. But he knows the 70 years is up because we're going to read a little bit later that he was reading in Jeremiah, and that's when he gets the 70 weeks prophecy, Daniel 9, I believe. And so he knows what's going on here, and he's read the writing on the wall. And he's going, you know what? Why don't you keep all that? But I really do want to tell you what it means. See ya.
He could have accepted it for about 30 minutes.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to get to a little bit of that here in a minute. Well, not tonight, but at some point, because there is, I believe, some other indicators in here that apply to us in our time. I just haven't got there yet. I've found some pretty cool little things that I believe play a role in here as to what happens with Daniel that I believe is relevant to what will happen for us.
It makes me think about, it's kind of an example to us when we're faced with.
Greater is he who is in me than he that is in the world. One of the verses that I was quoting to somebody this week about all this stuff going on, fear and terror, and that's their goal. And you all know this verse. God's not giving you the spirit of
Fear.
But of what?
Power.
Power, love, and a sound mind. Now we focus on a lot of those, love and a sound mind. But what God really brought to me this week, power. He can give you a spirit of fear, give you power. I've been meditating on that one word right there this week, is because usually when I've thought of it, I've used it most frequently to help people who were in a position of anxiety to have a sound mind. you know what I'm saying, put the emphasis on, you know, God's not giving you a spirit of fear, but, you know, love, power, and a sound mind. You don't have to be anxious. You don't have to be in a panic. You can be calm and all that. But this week, that's not where the emphasis has been in my spirit. The emphasis has been on the power component of that. I found that pretty interesting. So, unfortunately, that's probably about all the time we got for this week. I know we didn't get very far to Daniel, but we're going to. I can't predict what's going to happen next week, but sometimes those briefings are a little longer than you anticipate. But this particular night, I have no regrets about spending some time on that. This is a very, very significant thing that's going on, and it is not over. It is the very first move on the chessboard, and he's made his move. But the battle flag's being waved, and the next move's coming, and so it's going to get very interesting from here on out, because I believe that there's a lot of things we've been waiting for that's been setting the conditions, you know, with the pandemic and, you know, the economic forum and the agendas and all that. We've seen all this stuff setting the conditions, but in my way of looking at it, all those things have been environmental background. This is the play. In other words, you know, when you go to war, you try to choose the conditions. You know, you set up where you have the best lighting, you've got the high ground, and the enemy's maybe got their face in the sun, you've got your back to the sun, you're on the high ground, you're not in the rain, you're in the dry season where you can get traction, get your horses, you know, through, and maybe you've gone up ahead of time, you've poured out a little pitch, you know, in the weeds that you can light, and you've set all the conditions, but the battle hasn't started yet. The battle doesn't commence till the flag goes down. And so I think what we've been seeing since, you know, COVID and all these sort of things, where all the conditions being prepared, but I believe this week, flag went down.